Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the stream tonight. Tonight we've decided to cover a subject that a lot of people have been asking for, which is paganism, witchcraft, and mainly Wicca. But we will touch on things like Druidism and Shamanism, because there's a lot of confusion out there in the community at the moment as to what paganism, witchcraft, and Wicca actually is. Tonight I have got my usual hostess with the mostess, Andy.
Hey.
And we've also got Sam from Life After Life TV Productions.
Hello.
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 That was very subdued, Sam. Um, yeah, it looks like Streamlabs is running, so Maureen's going to be happy. Right, we will start off with a discussion on paganism itself. Paganism is a word that is really misconstrued in the paranormal community because a lot of people think being a pagan literally means you are a Wiccan or a witch or whatever, but there are definite differences. Pagan Paganism itself is basically the umbrella term that is used to cover all forms of worship that went on in Europe pre-Christian times. Is that the best way you'd say of describing it, Andy?
Yeah, it's like the general way of life,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's the belief system in it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But paganism itself is a huge umbrella of things. It does cover Wicca, it does cover witchcraft, but it also covers Druidism and shamanism as well. Also, things like people who just practice nature magic and don't particularly call themselves witches. They don't particularly identify with witchcraft. They prefer to call themselves uh, nature practitioners is one of the most common terms for it nowadays, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah.
But it is a very interesting subject. So that is what paganism itself is. Now, like I say, paganism is the umbrella term, which then spreads out to the different things. So the first thing we'll cover is Wicca. Now, Wicca itself is actually a religion. Um, it is part of paganism, obviously, but Wicca is the religion that was formed in 1940. A lot of people in the 40s, a lot of people are under the illusion that Wicca is as old as paganism. This is not the truth. Paganism was only formed in the 1940s. It was created by a guy called Gerald Gardner. Quite a character he was.
Hmm.
Um, he was very much into naturism and stuff like that, but he was originally indoctrinated into a Wiccan coven and then went on to popularise it once Winston Churchill actually decriminalised witchcraft in the 1950s. As most of you probably know by now, Winston Churchill was a massive supporter of the paranormal and the supernatural. He was very much into it, and it was because of him that the Witchcraft Act was repealed. This allowed Gerald Gardner to come out of the shadows, so to speak, and this is where the book that a lot of people use in their Wiccan practice gets its name from, the Book of Shadows. Not because it's anything dark or evil, it was because during the times of early Christianity and right up till the 1950s, uh, any sort of pagan practices were basically illegal. So the book was kept hidden or in the shadows, so to speak. So whenever you hear anybody speak about the Book of Shadows, they are not talking about some evil book or some dark book like the Necronomicon. It just basically signifies that the book was kept hidden because of, well, it was just popular opinion at the time that paganism itself was a big no-no. Like I say, once the Witchcraft Act was repealed, Gerald Gardner did a lot of TV interviews, and he actually went onto TV, onto Panorama at the time. Um, he didn't get a very warm welcome in the interview, I've got to be honest, because, like I say, in the 50s they were still quite conservative on their views. The interviewer basically, well, he wasn't even subtle about it. He basically accused Gerald of just being into sex orgies and things like that, and said that Wicca was just another front for naturism and sexual perversion. So he is considered the forefather of modern day Wicca. Is there anything you want to add about Wicca, Andy?
Yeah. So basically, in my understanding of it, it's not exactly like witchcraft. They've
Mm-hmm.
because it's a more modern spin on it. Then there is some changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like the old coven thing is more of a Wiccan thing.
Yeah.
Not saying that traditional couldn't do it, but it's a more of a Wiccan thing. Same way going through degrees of teaching and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what I understand is that they are very big on the fae, which I've got to bring up.
Yeah.
It's quite a big teaching about the fae in Wicca. But what you can find as well that they change some stuff to suit themselves with it.
Yeah.
Like certain tools, like the I don't know how you pronounce it, but I call it an athame.
That is the proper pronunciation of it.
I thought it was.
A lot of people, and I will say this, a lot of modern people who portray themselves as witches do it more so for the shock value of people finding out they're witches, and they do tend to mispronounce things and get things wrong and call it an athame. The correct pronunciation of the sacred knife or the magical knife is athame.
Yeah. Well, even though that tool as a ritual tool is long documented,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the prevalent tool. But Gerald was a fan of knives,
Yes, he was.
so it become the ultimate ritual tool in Wicca. So there is changes, there is
Yeah.
differences,
Yeah.
with Wicca.
Yeah, we will go on to go into them in detail. We just
Yeah.
a general overview of what it was at the moment. Right now, we'll go on to what witchcraft is. Now,
Wait.
again, witchcraft is neither a religion, as a lot of people seem to think it is, and neither is it a belief system. Witchcraft is actually a practice. You can get people who practice witchcraft who are not Wiccan. You can get people who are Wiccan, believe it or not, who don't actually practice witchcraft. They are rare, but you do get the occasional Wiccans who don't actually practice the art of magic. Few and far between, but like I say, there are some subtle differences. So when anybody ever talks about the subject, what you've got to understand the substructure of what's going on here. Paganism is the overall umbrella term used to describe it all. Witchcraft is an actual practice using pagan beliefs, and Wicca itself is the religion that again draws on old pagan rituals and pagan beliefs, but incorporates them into a religious format. So whereas Wicca does not involve any witchcraft doesn't involve any religion whatsoever, you can quite easily practice witchcraft but not be religious. Whereas Wicca is considered a religion that it is a practice in religion, but Wicca does incorporate witchcraft, so they do nestle inside each other. So that is the fundamental difference, because people do get them all mixed up and seem to think they're one and the same thing, and they are definitely not.
Definitely not.
They're not interchangeable terms. You do have to understand what the subtle differences are between them. We'll go up. We'll cover. Do you want to cover the first bit of witchcraft, Andy? Tell people what your. No, actually, before you give yours, we'll
Well,
ask Sam, because Sam will openly admit she knows very little on the subject. So what do you think your opinion of witchcraft is, Sam? What have you always been led to believe witchcraft is?
On a Christian standpoint, witchcraft was portrayed as a bad thing, and through the church considered part of the Antichrist.
Right. Okay.
You're either with God or you're against God. And even though these other practices are not against God,
Yeah.
they're portrayed as such. And actually, some of these practices have been misidentified as devil worship.
Right. Okay.
And actually, I have a shop that I go into a lot to buy crystals and incense and things, and I didn't know what any of these symbols meant. And I seen a woman, and she came in one day, and she says to the shopkeeper, my daughter has an altar at home, and she wants to get this and that. And I'm thinking to myself, Jeannie Mark, what are these people into? But it was my misunderstanding. I didn't even know. And it was only through yourself and Andy that I started to learn. And actually, the last couple of times I went to the shops, to this shop,
Yeah.
I started asking questions because I have no idea.
So would you say, before you started talking to me and Andy, that you would consider somebody who said they were a witch or practiced witchcraft, they would have fallen under the class of Satanists?
No, not in recent times.
Right.
But maybe 5 years ago. Maybe about 5 years ago.
Okay. Right, Andy, do you want to start babbling about witchcraft then?
Yeah, right, okay. So basically, the traditional witchcraft is all about nature, the earth, and harmonizing with it and utilizing it for magical purposes, right? But what you'll find is a lot of traditional witches and stuff, like your herbalists, a lot of them are midwives and stuff like that. It were all about peace, if you will. Now, they were very secretive, in what they were doing, but some of that classic, stigma about the old crone in the woods, a lot on it was true. It was true, a lot of it. Because they were outsiders. They preferred nature to people. But yeah, it's not as formed as your religious-based Wicca. It's more free-flowing, a bit more wild, a bit more. It's just all about nature and connecting with it.
Right, now I am going to make a comment here that may annoy some people in chat. It may not. Andy probably knows what I'm about to say. Or as a general idea, Sam will be totally clueless what I'm about to say, because she don't know about my pet aids. But one thing I will say regarding witchcraft, there are no colours in witchcraft. There is no such thing as a white witch. There is no such thing as a black witch. Magic is all based on intent. So anybody who practices witchcraft has got the potential to perform positive acts as well as negatives. How they choose to employ magic is entirely up to them. But if somebody says to you, I'm a white witch, they are not technically being truthful about what they are. What they really mean is they choose to employ magic in a positive term. That doesn't mean they are incapable of doing something darker, because they are, if they know their subject well enough. I will go into like funny rituals and stuff later, and quite funny beliefs that can be employed to protect against what I would consider negative magic. But I just want to get that point across. If people start telling you they're a black witch or they're a white witch, they are basically using modern day terms. If you go back to even to medieval times when it was a little bit more prevalent then, you would not find that they would describe themselves as a good witch or a bad witch, regardless of what media would have you believe. They were just witches or a practitioner of witchcraft. There is no colour division in witchcraft whatsoever. Magic and the implementation of magic is totally down to the intent that you employ that magic to do. Do you want to add anything to that, Andy?
No, that's bang on.
To bring this color into it, to take away from negativity around witches and the misunderstanding in the past. Or is that would I be
Uh,
right?
it, it, a lot of the
Oh,
new age stuff. It's become very popular nowadays to say you're a pagan or to say you're a witch. And people love to stick labels on themselves. Um, I once had a conversation with three people in a chat. One told me she was a white witch, one told me she was a green witch, and the other one told me she was a weather witch. And I was just in fits of laughter over it because, that it just shows that people are very influenced by media in modern day times, and they pick things up off the media and then they pull it into their belief system, which there's nothing wrong in doing that, but it gets to the point where it starts to take away from the original meaning of what it meant to practice witchcraft. Um, if people say to me, "What are you?" I always say, "Oh, I'm pagan." I never say I'm a witch. I always say I'm pagan because although I do believe in a lot of Wiccan beliefs, which is part of the religion based on Wicca, there's also parts of Wicca I'm not particularly fond of. And it's the same with witchcraft. There are certain things I would employ if I was going to do anything witchcraft related, and other things I wouldn't. And you'll find this is quite common in the pagan community around you, Andy.
yeah,
Because it is so free flowing, people can pick and choose what they want. But all this thing of labelling themselves with white witch or black witch or dark witch or light witch, it does get a little bit, ridiculous because magic itself has no division in that respect. Magic, you're employing forces or energies of nature, and as you know, nature is a complete balance. It has its dark aspects and it has its light aspects. There is no division between the two. Nature can be both dark and light, and because you're using these elemental energies, witchcraft has to follow exactly the same natural laws. There
yeah.
is no division between the two. You can easily employ one as you can the other. Right, Jason's got a question for you, Andy, because this is one of yours, edge witches. I know you like to talk
Right.
about edge witches.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, would you want to explain to people what you class as a hedge witch?
So for me, an edge witch is just somebody who purely works with plant life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they'll just specialize completely in like herbs and
Yeah,
plants
yeah.
and flower and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. They'll not entertain nothing else. They'll just completely concentrate on that.
Mm-hmm. Is that okay for you, Jace? I'm surprised he's asking questions, to be honest with you.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, but like I say, when it comes to the actual employment of witchcraft itself, don't be fooled by these people who are using all these modern day terms because it does skew what witchcraft actually is. If people choose to just employ the positive side of magic, that's fine. But claiming that they're a white witch it's a Hollywood term. It's a media term. It's not something that you will find um, people who employ the older practices rather than the modern day take on things will actually refer to themselves as. They will just normally say, "I'm a practitioner of witchcraft." Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, a lot of this is just very strange Hollywood labels that people slap on themselves, and it does annoy me when people come in and start banging on to me that they're white witches or weather witches or whatever. You know, because it's just a little bit Hollywoody and media for my liking. Um, I prefer people to just keep it old school in terms of witchcraft and just say that they practice witchcraft. Again, like I say, just because they practice witchcraft doesn't necessarily make themselves a Wiccan, because um, you have to practice the religious elements of the Wiccan religion to declare yourself a Wiccan. Even though Wiccans use witchcraft as part of the religion, that is incorporated into Wicca rather than actually defining Wicca. Like I said previously, there are Wiccans who actually use no real ritualistic magic at all, or nature magic, apart from personal use sort of thing. Um, Put your questions in chat, because there is a lot of things people ask regarding witchcraft and Wicca, paganism, shamanism, druidism. You've got them all. Do you want to go just do a brief outlining of shamanism, Andy? Because it's a subject I ain't really big on, but you're more into your mushrooms and stuff, and I know shamanism does incorporate that stuff a lot more.
Yeah, I don't like I say I don't know a whole lot. I just know a few aspects. I know it's really big on sort of mind altering sort of substances to have like experiences and like like these like a bit like Native Americans like with them sweat lodges with a
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things they use is fly agaric mushroom.
Right.
And by all accounts,
Is that the red and that's the red and white one, isn't it?
that's the red with white
Yeah,
spots.
the one that everybody recognises.
Yeah, and traditionally, what they would do, they would build the little lodge around a birch tree, with chimney next to it, so they could fly out of the chimney once they had the experience, kind of thing. But the fly agaric actually grows on roots of birch trees, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So also they're really big into musical frequency to get into states.
Yeah.
So like rattles and drums, and it's all about, I think, expanding consciousness and shamanism to contact otherworldly beings through different frequency.
Yeah, shamanism tends to work more on spiritual entities, done it more so than, even though they're nature based. It's more of a spirit realm type of belief system that they employ, and that where they use the psychedelic mushrooms and everything to achieve contact in the realm they work in.
Yeah.
You've gone really quiet, Andy.
Have I?
Oh, it's all right. You're back now.
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah. Right, Maureen. Maureen says, what is the difference between a wizard and a warlock? A wizard for me is someone who practices not necessarily what you would consider witchcraft. A wizard tends to be more, they're not so ritualistic in the magic, and a wizard will employ magical methods that are not always nature based. A warlock is a very loose term for me, because you will get some male witches who prefer to refer to themselves as warlock rather than a witch. For some people, it is just a male term for a witch.
But in Wicca, though, in definition, a male witch who has been banned from coven.
It depends on the branch of Wicca, Andy, because Wicca, like Christianity, has got branches. Like Christianity's got Roman Catholic, Church of England, that kind of thing. Wicca has also got its different sub branches. But on a general base in Wicca, a warlock is just it is another term for a male witch. You'll never get a female warlock. Personally, I consider male or female to be a witch, but some people prefer the title of I'm a male, so I'm a male, and I practice witchcraft, so I'm a warlock. That is basically the difference, Maureen. But your wizard is more one. It's more of a fantasy term for me, and two, if people tend to declare themselves as either witches, wizards, or sorcerers, they also use magical practices outside of nature-based magic. They can use all kinds of things. That they can use symbolic magic, and they will even at some time. Oh, what's the word, Andy, for when they're using elements, turning lead into gold?
Oh, alchemy.
Alchemy.
Yeah,
That's more so along those sorts of lines that a wizard would do.
yeah.
A warlock for me is basically just a male witch or a male practitioner of witchcraft. What did you think a warlock was, Sam?
I wasn't quite sure. I just thought there was witches and wizard was the male version of a witch.
Yeah, you will never hear a male witch refer to themselves as a wizard,
Right.
or not one who genuinely practices witchcraft anyway. Have you ever heard of a male witch calling themselves a wizard, Andy?
I hadn't now, ever.
I've got to be honest. It's a term that it's a term I've never heard a male witch refer to themselves as. They will occasionally refer to themselves as warlocks, but like I say, again, this again is another term that Joe Public tends to get mixed up a lot because they think warlock is basically an evil male witch or something to do with Satanism. They tend to practice devil worship, but that is not what it is. A warlock is basically just a male practitioner of witchcraft. Maureen says, is herbalist a witch, Andy?
Uh, it depends on what they're doing with the work. If it's just for medicinal stuff, well, it depends on age of time as well with that.
Hmm.
Because back in the day, they would have been classed as so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, modern, maybe not so much.
Yeah. See, what I'd say to that, Maureen, is for me, an herbalist. Witches do practice herbalism, but they tend to use they incorporate the herbalism into a magical spell or whatever.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
pure blood herbalist will do nothing regarding rituals or spells. It will just basically be relying on the properties of a plant that they're using. So I would say, some herbalists would come under the umbrella term of just being a pagan. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're under the nature umbrella, but not all of them would actually be classed as witches because they wouldn't be doing the actual witchcraft elements of it. They would have to be practicing, some form of magic combined with the herbs to be classed as a witch. But like Andy said, in Middle Ages, if you don't follow JC, regardless of what you did, you were a witch. It was as simple as that. You were either with or without, as Sam said earlier on as well. You were either on the one bus or the other, which is
Yeah.
pretty much what it was. Right. Druidism is another form of paganism. Again, they're not Wiccans. Druidism is a funny one in it, Andy, because
It is.
it's got a foot in both a religion and both as a practice.
Yep.
Because this is the one that I would say is probably the only one that falls under all three categories of paganist belief system and practice,
Yep.
because druidic magic is entirely different to witchcraft magic. Um, they were solely based on nature. Druidism had also got quite dark elements to it. A lot of people are under the impression that druids are tree huggers who ran around healing people and were really nice to animals and stuff like that. If you go back to pre-Christian times and probably up to quite recent times, it probably ain't done so much now. but there was certainly sacrifice involved in Druidism through the ages, both animal and human. It's one of the belief systems that tended to be darker than witchcraft. Witchcraft tends to have more of a positive slant, whereas druidic magic tends to sit in the neutral camp. It can be very dark or it can be very good, and they sometimes will perform dark um, acts or rituals to achieve a positive result. Is there anything you want to add on to Druidism, Andy?
Um, it- do you know? I've read that it's a lot more secretive
Oh
than
yeah,
what witchcraft was,
yeah,
and
yeah,
to say, because I've got some really old books on Druidism and stuff, and there's disclaimers in these books saying it is only word of mouth.
yeah,
You know what they were actually doing, and it's one of the things that's never truly been proven one way or another what they were actually up to.
Well, this is one of the things that
It's
defines Druids is they refuse to write anything down. It was all oral knowledge, wasn't it?
yeah, it's absolutely one of the best kept secrets I've ever
Yeah.
come across.
They were basically like the old version of the Masons in terms of secrecy.
Yeah, very much like. So obviously we don't have all that much information on them,
Hmm.
but I think what I do know, what sounds right, is pretty cool stuff. What I've researched, and
Yeah.
this is something I've never been able to understand because anybody on who watches us and on our channel, we've got this channel intro and it goes through what we do, and I always say a dash of druidry, right?
Mm.
Because I'm into old megalithic stone
Yeah.
circles and
Yeah.
stuff, and they're very big on all that, you know.
Yeah.
As we know, we've got a druid's temple not too far away from
Yep.
us, and this is one of the things that's always confused me because I see me and Becky as witches,
Hmm.
but the nature spirit have always referred to us as druids,
Hmm.
which is always like, well,
Yeah.
oh, okay, you know.
Yeah.
So am I doing something I don't realise I'm doing that's more on that side of things? I don't know.
Hmm.
It's something to look at, but yeah, apparently they were very, very powerful in
Yeah.
what they could, or in all accounts. But
Hmm.
you know, I'd love to know more. I'd
Oh
love to
yeah.
know more.
What was your opinion post all these discussions, Sam? Did you ever encounter anything referencing druids or stuff, or what did you think a druid was?
That's what I was about to say. And I'm going to mention it. I'm going to probably sound stupid,
Go on.
but um, there might be an association here. I thought druids were some sort of something similar to the Vikings.
Right. Okay.
Because I know a friend of mine, he was getting he was going to get a sleeve done of a tattoo, and he was going to base it around druids,
Hmm.
and that's what my impression was. Some sort of warriors of like Vikings.
The Viking religion revolved strongly around druids.
Ah,
Mhm.
right. So
It,
that's where that
yeah.
association came
Yeah. That although witchcraft was practiced in the Scandinavian countries, Druidism was a lot more powerful, and it was literally their main religion was the Druid religion.
Yeah, I actually seen some. It was a documentary. It was a documentary on a certain stone actually,
Hmm.
and how the Vikings navigated was through a crystal.
Hmm.
So they really knew a lot of stuff about
Yeah.
crystals and stuff,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of tests done on this
Yeah.
particular crystal.
Yeah. See, what a lot of people don't realise with paganism, they think paganism is limited solely to the British Isles. Paganism covered the entire of Europe. and each certain branches in Europe had concentrations of various things. Like what a lot of people don't realise is the very first witch trials actually occurred in Switzerland,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in the Alpine countries, the last place that you'd have expected them to happen.
I've brought this up to people before, and
Yeah.
they've sworn me down. It's always been in UK, and I've been like, no, it were in Europe. It was further into Europe. It started.
The very first witchcraft trials and accusations actually occurred in Switzerland, and
Yeah,
then it
yeah.
spread to the other Alpine countries. Um, Druidism was extremely strong in the British Isles, but it was the main religion of the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
Like the Vikings and the Danes and all them kind. It was very, very strong in the Scandinavian countries.
Well, all rune language tallies up, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Because like obviously, Druids were big on runes, and
Yeah.
that come from
Yeah.
Scandinavia.
yeah.
You know.
Druids had a very strong presence in Wales as well. They were also in Scotland and Ireland, but I believe the Scottish and the Irish, more so than the Welsh, tended to have their own version of Druidism. And I think it quite interlapped between Ireland and Scotland on what they believed and did, sort of thing. Even though Wales is close to Ireland, I believe Wales had their own version, but the Scottish and Irish forms of Druidism were very similar compared to Wales and England. But we've got Stonehenge to show what the presence of the Druids. The most famous one, but there are Druidic circles not only scattered all over the British Isles, they are scattered all over Europe. And the original ones were actually wooden rather than stone. Because what a lot of people don't realise is there is actually an older henge, just a few miles from Stonehenge, which is where they believe the original, and they call it Woodhenge. They're really original in the name. They believe that was where the community was based when they were actually constructing Stonehenge, but that was a massive wooden henge. A lot of these structures as well, especially with the Druids, are all interconnected with the ley lines. It appeared, like Andy said, the Druids never wrote anything down, but because of where they built their structures, it's pretty obvious. Not only did the Druids have a very keen knowledge on the ley lines that crisscross Europe, they also played a very important role in the Druid religion, because they literally built their circles and henges on top of the ley lines themselves. I'm just checking. There's no. Brett Odin was seen as a pagan god in Germany, wasn't he? Odin was one of the Norse gods. Well, he was the father of the Norse gods, wasn't he? Odin.
Yeah.
One-eyed Odin. He had his eye pecked out and stuff.
That's it.
All linked with the tree of life, that, innit? He sacrificed an eye for knowledge. But if what I will say about Druidism, even though it was spread out all over Europe, it still maintained very strong similarities regardless of what country it was in. So I do believe that there was a lot of continental travel amongst the Druids, where they intermingled a lot, within the countries. Because whereas witchcraft tends to vary across the world in its practices and stuff, the Druid, even though there was slight variances per region, the Druidic religion seems to be a lot more concentrated, and takes a much more standard form than witchcraft does. Right, Andy, do you want to start the topic of paganism meets Christianity? This is always a good one.
What? Why are you putting this one on me? Oh no.
Go on.
Oh no.
Explain where a lot of the misconceptions of Christians come from regarding paganism.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
I don't know even. Start me with something, please. Cause everything's just flooded into my brain at once.
Right.
Start.
Start with where demons and the devil come from.
Right, okay. I thought that might have been a good one. So, right, the old devil thing, right, is very well documented that obviously to promote a god that is good, they had to take something and put a bad, in any I mean, I know we've got Christians present like Sam and stuff, but for any sort of new system that has got a form of control, there's got to be a negative figure.
Yeah.
And what they did, because the predominant world view was paganism, was to take the predominant god of paganism, which was the horned god, and make him the bad figure. Now, the horned god spans through many cultures. We've got Pan is the most recognizable one. The old goat-legged, horned, playing the panpipe or the flute or whatever. And they took his image because he was the predominant male god of paganism at the time. And then to create his underlings, which in paganism, the horn god's because he's the god of the wilderness, and the nature itself.
Yeah.
Then the underlings would be the fae.
I'm sorry, Andy. I've just read Eliar's comment.
All right, what's that?
Andy sounds just like my dad. Ha ha.
Hey, that's turned around a bit from being a stalker last week, isn't it? Oh no!
Perhaps that's what it is. They say girls go for men like the dads.
Oh well. There you go.
Go on, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I just found that funny.
So the underlings to the on god would be the fae, and then this lends fact that the fae, because pagans heavily believed in all the nature spirits, then it would make them out to be bad as well, not to communicate with them anymore, to turn your backs on them, they're all evil.
Yeah.
This is where the stories come from about them doing evil things and blah, 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 blah. But what I can say, there's a flip side at coin, and I've got to say this because this is my own logical viewpoint, and I reckon they also, in my view, used the image of some of the fae for angels as well.
Right.
Because of the shining ones, the bright ones, the wings, they can come and help. What they use them for both good and evil, but just changed entirely to suit what it was going to be about,
Yeah.
But that's written fact.
Right. What's your opinion on that as a Christian, Sam? Hearing that.
Very often in the Christian in the Christian religion and in the Christian belief, there's no actual image. So very often the pictures that we see are manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
The good and evil, we have these images, and I don't know, I'm not 100% sure about everything about it, because we don't have that proof image. We don't have photographs, you know what I mean?
Has it surprised you that the Christian devils and the devil himself have actually just sprang from a corruption of Pan and the Fae, or what most people would know as Pan?
Could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Ghost Adventures, and they came over to Ireland.
Yeah.
and they had a man on with a very extremely Irish accent, where there was what do you call the house again now? Leigh Castle,
Yeah.
where one night there was a ship, and the ship ran aground in a big storm, and they were sitting around the table playing cards. And then somebody dropped the card, and there was the hoofed feet of the devil himself.
Yeah.
And went up to. I find it pretty hard to believe.
Yeah. Yeah. But that is actually now, and even historians believe this now, that in terms of Christian imagery and beliefs, it was a corruption of the god part of paganism. What is also interesting to note, and I have always said, was add um, the god in pagan, the male aspect, the god in paganism always represents the dark time of the year. So that is basically the go-to entity, whatever you want to refer to it as the one to go. I have always said, would it have been that paganism was reversed and the goddess ruled the dark time of the year? Would Christians now be practicing with a female god or goddess? What do you think of that, Andy?
That's very interesting.
I've always wondered that.
Yeah. It makes you wonder.
Well, when Christianity came, you know, they wanted to change people to a belief and take away that other belief.
Yep.
So
They built their churches on pagan worship sites.
yeah, so to demonize it would be the way to go.
Hmm.
To convert people over to
Well,
Christianity.
that was exactly what they did, but the old stonemasons basically fought back, the old pagan stonemasons, because if you go into a lot of the really old churches going back, into even pre-medieval times, if you can find any, they tend to have images of the Green Man and stuff carved into the churches in inconspicuous places, so that they could still go into the church and still continue their pagan beliefs under the guise of worshipping Christianity. That is quite common. I just want to answer the question that Joanne asked us. She said, um, are druidic rituals similar to witchcraft ones? For me, and I'll get Andy to give his opinion to you, Joanne. For me, where the biggest variance of them is they both share the aspects of they worship their nature based rituals, but the druidic rituals, from what we can work out now, they did involve sacrifice, whereas witchcraft rituals don't. There's no cutting open of innocent little bunnies or sacrificing people in witchcraft. And this is where anything along those lines, if they are, this is where people get witchcraft and Satanism mixed up, because if people are sacrificing animals, or they are sacrificing people, or whatever, they're sacrificing anything, that is not a witchcraft practice. That is most definitely a satanic one, which falls into the realms of Christianity, not into the realms of paganism. This is something else I've got to stress. Satanists are not pagans. They are an offshoot of Christianity. And
Do you know what? Sorry.
Go on, Sam, before Andy gives
You know what I
his.
was going to ask you? Would Satanists be out worshipping or doing rituals in the woods?
Highly unlikely. They tend to keep their rituals very, very private and stuff. They tend to be in private houses and very
That's
out. People, they don't tend to go into the woods and start chopping up animals and stuff.
That's what I thought, because there was a case about 10 years ago where the priest at mass
Yeah.
Spoke about devil worshipping in the local woods.
Right.
And at the time I was shocked, but
Mhm.
you know, as the years went on, I was thinking it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because very often, you know, I thought, you know, devil worshipping
Yeah.
was done behind closed doors
Right.
and not in the. Why would they be out in the flipping woods like?
Yeah. Dead.
Oh,
I think only once you get out, going out into the woods is like young wannabes that haven't been
Yeah. Yeah.
educated in former Satanism and they just think they're doing something
Yeah.
cool.
Again, it's
Yeah.
again, it's this modern age thing that witchcraft suffers with a lot lately. That you know, it's the in thing to go in the woods and wear your silly robes and your black robes where you're pulled up and worship ghosts and cut chickens' throats and stuff like that. It's that kind of thing. Would you agree, Andy?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
do you
Right.
think? Do you
Go on,
think
sorry.
Hollywood have a lot to answer for around that area?
Hollywood and and media in general have a lot to answer for in the entire paranormal field, but very
Exactly.
very much so when it comes to paganism and witchcraft and the Wiccan religion and Druidism and Shamanism and anything to do with the practice of magic or nature worship. They are a nightmare. Right. James has put, Brett, does Earn the Hunter have any origins in paganism or just British folklore? Right. For me, James, I think it was a way for people who had been forced into the Christian religion to carry on um, the beliefs of Pan and the old pagan ways. The way what a lot of them did, and this is why the fairies were taken into fairy tales. It was a way for people in the time to carry on keeping the pagan knowledge alive without getting in trouble with the church. Andy,
Uh, Sorry, what go on, what were we answering again?
Brett, does Earn the Hunter have any origins in paganism or just British folklore?
Apparently, yeah, there is some origins. I've been looking at some stuff to do with this one for my sort of coven I'm forming because I'm wanting sort of statues of certain things, but all folklore has got roots in paganism as well. So
Yep, yep.
you know,
I was just saying this is why the Fae were bunged into fairy tales to keep
yeah, that's
to
right.
keep the information going, sort of thing, so that the knowledge wasn't lost. And you will
Yeah,
find this with a lot of subjects surrounding paganism. They
hmm
they, they were they were never stopped. They were just um, given alternate forms that the church couldn't really pull anybody up on,
yeah.
sort of thing. The church were well aware of what was going on, but in that respect, they were powerless to actually do anything about it because it wasn't open worship. It was an alternate way. Um, Again, that'll lead me on to the other subject. Sam, what is your I'll ask Sam first, and I'll ask you, Andy. What
Okay.
is your opinion on modern day opinion that people have to come from a line of witches to be a witch? What do you think about that, Sam? Do you think that's true or not?
I don't think so, because you know, if you're interested and you want to learn all about it and you do the witchy things,
Hmm.
would you not be a witch?
Exactly. Andy?
Right, I'm gonna put a little slight different spin on this.
Hmm.
Right, so anybody can be a witch.
Hmm.
Yeah, be it brand new, didn't know nothing, start at any point in your life, can do it. Yeah,
Hmm.
there is some bloodline families that have gone down practicing and passed it on and passed it on and passed it on, and that's fine. That's fine as well. One's no greater than the other, but be in our beliefs that we go back a long, long time when reincarnation was the prevalent belief system.
Yeah.
I believe that a soul can come back many times and carry on finding its feet in its practice to evolve its soul.
Right.
That would be more the hereditary explanation of witchcraft than blood line.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts anyway.
Right, Jason just put something in chat that I'm going to brush on in a minute, and this is one of the biggest misconceptions for me. For me, I always say to people, the thing about the bloodlines is total rubbish. Just because you come from a line of people who've practiced witchcraft doesn't make you any more skilled at witchcraft. Like Andy says, with the reincarnation thing, it may mean that you come back with more knowledge on the subject, but it is not going to make you any more powerful in witchcraft.
No.
Because if you go back pre-Christian times, everybody of European descent is descended from pagans. Before we had Christianity, everybody practiced a pagan. They had pagan beliefs in one form or another, be it shamanism, druidism. I won't say Wicca because Wicca wasn't around then, but the nature type beliefs of witchcraft. Jace has put there, can't it skip certain generations? No, it can't, Jason, and the reason it can't skip certain generations because being a witch and witchcraft is not an inherited ability, it is a practice. So anyone can practice it.
Yep.
It is not built into your genetics. And that is one of the biggest misconceptions about witchcraft is people who insist, I've come from a line of witches, so that makes me, a proper witch. It is, in my opinion, it is total bumcum. One, solely on the fact that witchcraft itself is a practice and not a genetically inherited ability. And two, the fact if you go back far enough in anybody's history, they will have pagan ancestry if they come from Europe. James says, Jace, I think most churches were built on pagan sites. All the early churches were, James. It was the way they stopped people practicing paganism by plonking a church on a pagan worship site. But like I said, the stonemasons of the time who built the church, who were forced into building the churches, got round that by implementing pagan symbology into the church without the church realising it. Is there any more questions in there? Because I've been missing some of the chat. Right, shall we go on to the likes of the Salem witch trials and Pendle Hill?
Oh, wow.
This is going to be an interesting subject. What do you know about Salem and Pendle Hill, Sam?
Well, nothing actually.
So you don't know anything on the topic of the witch trials and stuff?
I've heard about the witch trials. The psychic who was am I along the same line as the I think it was the last woman that was charged for witchcraft, who was able to tell the loved ones of people that were at war that boats were sinking and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was a lady in Britain.
Yeah. What a lot of people you're talking about Ellen Duncan, the medium.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. She was the last one to actually be done as a witch, and what she was doing isn't actually witchcraft. It was mediumship, and this again shows how ignorant people are, or can be, on the subject, because they prosecuted that woman under an act that actually didn't apply to her as such, because she was done under the Witchcraft Act, and what she was doing was actually mediumship, which is an whole separate subject from from witchcraft itself. This is where people need to learn the distinctions of exactly what witchcraft is. Right, to do with it. Hang on, I'll just answer. We'll answer Maureen's question first before we carry on with this. It's a really good one as well. I'll ask that first, then I'll ask you. Sam, do you believe that someone can be Christian and also practice witchcraft?
I think in modern day, yes.
Right, okay. Go on, Sam. Why do you think that?
Yeah, because I mean, more and more people are going into these shops that sells crystals and incense and stuff, and these altars and stuff.
Yeah.
I do believe that some people are practicing both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Andy?
Right, so any opinion, I'm just going to state, any opinion anybody's got on this matter is fine, right? We've all got us personal. Yeah. So, it is my belief that, yes, you can, if you are new to the subjects. Once you become a researcher of witchcraft and paganism, you will find if it's for you, you'll kind of ditch one for the other.
Yeah.
Because once you've learnt the history and something changes inside you. I mean, I'm relatively a newcomer. I'm a baby to it, but I'm a sponge for information. I'm always reading. I'm always learning, and I quickly put my barriers up. Yeah. And we're like, right, this is that's it. For what I know and I've learnt, you'll find you'll waver towards something and come away, if you will. But that's just my opinion on it.
Right. Now, I say yes, definitely, but there are certain things you have to take into consideration. I believe that Christians can practice pure witchcraft, because that is basically just using the practice itself. A Christian cannot practice Christianity and Wicca, because then you are bringing into the magical rituals a god and a goddess. So you bring in different gods into the mix. So a pure Christian a Christian who practices pure witchcraft can do it, because there is no invoking of gods in witchcraft itself. It is basically the practice of the magic. The second you start to pull out of witchcraft and go into the general umbrella of paganism, then you bring in deities and other gods. So that is when you'll find, like Andy said, you'll reach a point where you have got to pick one set of gods or god or the other. But as long as a person is practicing pure witchcraft, they can still be a Christian, because they are not invoking any gods in the actual practice of witchcraft itself, in the actual art of practicing the witchcraft itself. Would you agree with that, Andy and Sam?
Yeah, I mean, like, not having any knowledge of this, but I'm thinking that, around the nature side of things, and people believing in the miracles of nature, was created by God. That way there's some sort of connection.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, I agree. All I can say is, because witchcraft does involve certain elements, even in its practice, don't expect any magical stuff to work in its entirety, because there's certain things that go, but you're a Christian, I'm not going to help you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Some stuff would work, some stuff
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah, and that was why I said pure witchcraft rather
Yeah,
than just
yeah, yeah,
witchcraft
yeah,
in general. You know, as long as you maintain you were practicing the pure elements of it, where there's no gods involved, and there are things in witchcraft that do involve you calling on things like elementals and stuff, which would go against Christianity. But if
yeah.
you're just doing pure line witchcraft without pulling entities into it, then you can do it as a Christian. But I wouldn't I wouldn't say that you could, once you start getting into evocation and things like familiars and stuff like that, then I'm afraid you've either got to give up on the witchcraft or give up on the Christianity, one or the other. They can't coexist once you start mingling gods or entities, because Christianity itself goes against everything. You know, there is just God and nothing else. Whereas witchcraft does tend to be a little bit, and paganism tends to be a little bit more accepting. Because what it's important to note in paganism is although there are generally accepted to be a male and female aspect to the deities, they do vary between different pagans. What is god and goddess to one set of pagans might not necessarily be the god and goddess to another group of pagans. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the basic element of male and female, yin yang, light and dark, it's always, that is universal in paganism. They just vary what they refer to their gods as, or how they consider their gods. Some pagans respect their gods as an authoritative figure, and to be worshipped. Other pagans view their gods more as equal partners. Correct, Andy?
Yep.
You know, this is the beauty of paganism. It is very much a personal belief system. There is a lot of leeway in paganism, much more so than there is in Christianity or the other mainstream religions, where you have to work within a more rigid framework. There is a lot of freedom of choice within paganism. Good night, Ellie. Right, let's go back to the witchcraft trials, Andy.
Okay.
Right, like I said earlier, which probably surprised a lot of people, the earliest witchcraft trials actually occurred in Switzerland and the Alpine countries. It then spread across Europe through Italy, Spain, Germany, and all that lot before it finally hit Britain. Our most famous cases of the witchcraft trials, I would say, are the Pendle cases. Basically, for me, I think there were over 20 people imprisoned and some of them sentenced to death, for being witches. For me, I think it turned out that all the accusations were based on a young girl who I think had just got a problem with her family and her neighbours, and then when neighbours were pulled in, they used their grudges against other neighbours to accuse them of being witches, and that was how Pendle formed. And I think the same uh, was for Salem, where it went from being misconstruing people's motives, because while I do believe a lot of these people would be practicing what the church would class as witchcraft, I think a lot of them were just herbs women who,
Mm-hmm.
they were like medieval midwives and stuff like that. They weren't doing anything negative to anybody in the community. But Salem is the most worldwide famous one for witchcraft trials, and there was a lot of people who were burned at the stake. Interesting to note with the witchcraft trials is the difference between the trials that happened in Europe and England and the ones that happened in America, particularly between the difference between the UK and the American ones, is the Americans tended to burn their witches, whereas the English tended to either drown them or hang them, one or the other.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Andy?
No, I think you've pretty much hit nail on the head with all that.
Okay, coke. Right, we'll move on to the subject of threefold consequence or thricefold consequence and the Wiccan reed. Do you know anything about what either of those are, Sam?
No.
Right, Andy, while I run to the loo, do you want
Oh
to
dear.
quickly explain to people what the Wiccan Read is and what threefold consequence actually is?
Right. Okay. So, Wiccan Read is basically the guideline of Wicca, right? It's like the written law that you must abide by when following this religion. Um, it's all about sort of the lighter side of things, you know, being in love and harmony, and you know, you must always fairly take something if you're giving something and stuff like that. To be honest, it's a pretty good set of rules, but again, in comparison to traditional witchcraft, which has no rules, it is another sort of control. You've got to abide by this if you are becoming a Wiccan. Right, so threefold rule in Wicca is that if you put something out magically, then you can get it back threefold. You know, so depending what you do, you've got to always pay the price. So, but they do say with traditional, well, a lot of traditionals do say that if rather than free, if you're doing it via the fae, expect it back 10.
Is that what they say with the Fae?
Yeah,
It's
expect
tenfold.
it back 10. Yeah,
Hmm.
because they're a little bit of at top.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I've just gone through Reed being like a law and
Yeah.
a rule system, you know,
Yeah.
and then moved on to threefold, whatever you put out there.
Yeah. Especially in, the threefold consequence does tend to be more widely known within the Wiccan religion. But I do believe that, most paganistic religions do have their own form of the reed, and they certainly have their own form of consequence. But in the Wiccan religion, it is actually believed that whatever you do is returned back to you threefold. So if you do good deeds, you will have good deeds returned back to you threefold, and it is not necessarily a complete mirror reflection. It just means that you will have positive things happen, come back that are threefold better than the one you've done. On the flip side of that, if you do something malicious or nasty, you will have nastiness or negative energy returned to you 3 times as bad. So this is again falls into the colour thing about white and black, and this is why I say it's a bit ridiculous when people say they're white witches and black witches, because there isn't this division as such. It is all down to intent. Magic itself is a neutral power. It is how it is wielded that makes the difference.
Yeah.
Wow, Maverick. So it was Jace asking about the elements, fire and water. Did I miss something there? Thinking on the bottom. Right, now, because now we've covered that, we can actually go on to the spells of Wicca and paganism, Andy.
Okay.
Sam, do you believe that a Wiccan, and I'll say a Wiccan, do you believe it is a Wiccan would cast a love spell for you to make, I don't know, Angelina Jolie fall in love with you?
No.
Right, why not?
I don't know. I don't have that kind of an understanding. I do follow, and before I became a paranormal investigator, I was looking at a channel called the White Witch Parlor,
Right.
but it was more around crystals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she would talk about spells on a video, and I would just I would, it would go in one ear and out the other, kind of thing.
Right. Um, do you want to tell her why a Wiccan couldn't do it, Andy, or do you want me?
Go on, you. I've actually just got to nip off because somebody's coming to pick something up, so I'll be
Right,
2
okay.
seconds.
All right, no problem.
Is it got something to do with free will or something?
It is basically a Wiccan cannot do a specific love spell on a person because you are then interfering with free will, and that breaks the Wiccan reed, and it harm none do what they will.
Yeah.
Because even though you are doing it as a positive act for the person who's requesting it, it then becomes a negative act to the person it is cast upon, because they go from freely falling in love with somebody to being forced via magic to do it. And this is why when you see these witches selling love potions for you to fall in love with blah 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 blah, it is all complete rubbish, because
Well,
no Wiccan can do it. You
yeah.
can do a general spell, a love spell, where you can ask for, you could say, attract love, but you couldn't specify the target of that love in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. This is where you've got to be very, very careful when it comes to the implementation of witchcraft within the Wiccan religion framework,
Yeah.
because there is that element that you cannot influence or harm anybody, and even influencing their free will is considered an act of harm, and that is why it couldn't be done.
Yeah. Through watching the witch parlor, the White Witch Parlor,
Hmm.
the love spell is supposed to give you positivity.
Yeah,
So you send out the positivity
yeah,
and you track that positivity.
yeah, yeah. It is
Because you give,
that is acceptable within the bounds of the Wiccan religion, because you are not actually interfering directly with somebody's will. You can ask for love to come to you, but you've got no control over who that love comes from. You're not interfering directly with somebody's free will, sort of thing. Like you said, you're giving out the positivity, and the positivity is being returned to you, again with the threefold consequence. But if somebody comes, if you go to somebody and they claim to you that they are a Wiccan, or they class themselves as a white witch, which is what the Wiccans tend to do, and then they tell you that they can make you a spell so your boyfriend stays with you or your boyfriend comes back to you, they are totally lying and failing in what they can actually do.
I'm
Because
back.
it, welcome back. That was quick.
Yeah, I just had to pull some bags to the door, but they might knock on the door, so I'll have to jump off again.
Right, okay. No problem. I was
is
just explaining, Andy, that you can't do
Yeah.
a direct spell against somebody to
Right, yeah.
attract love, because it breaks the reed
Free will.
of
Yeah,
free
yeah.
will.
Yeah.
It's classed as an harmful act.
is
Yeah.
would it be right in saying that there is this belief that if you did uh, get involved in doing such a spell, that there would be
Hmm.
consequences for the person that's done that?
Yeah, there would actually be consequences for both people. It would actually rebound threefold on the person who requested it, who wanted it, and it would threefold rebound on the person who actually cast the spell or did the ritual to do it.
All right.
There'd be consequences for both. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
like one got it and the other one dodged the bullet. They would both get it. If what people believe, as in witchcraft is true, then both people would actually get that come to them. Now it's the same with things like curses and hexes. You cannot be cursed or hexed by a Wiccan. You can be cursed or hexed by somebody who practices witchcraft, because they are not constrained by the Wiccan reed, which is an it harm none. And this is where the differences come in between religions and practices. anybody can practice witchcraft and do negative or positive acts within witchcraft framework. A Wiccan can only perform positive acts using witchcraft. So basically, if you wanted to say curse your neighbour, you would not be able to go to a Wiccan to get that done. But you could possibly find somebody who practices witchcraft who would do it, but as Wiccans, we believe that they would still have the consequences whether they believe in it or not. You know, it would still rebound on them. It is. We believe that it is not confined just to people who believe in the Wiccan religion. It is generalised across witchcraft. That if you perform a negative act, it will rebound on you, both on the person who wants it and the person who actually performs it. So, you know, don't get doing it. I Batman. There is also a very old spell you can actually perform, and it always amuses a lot of people when I tell them there are various ways you can actually protect yourself from negative magical influences like curses, hexes, things like that. And basically, you get a glass jar, Sam. You fill it full of nails, iron nails, must be iron.
Back in a minute.
Okay, Andy. And then you pee in the jar. And you keep peeing in this jar until the jar is full. Then you seal the lid on it and you bury it or hide it either within your property or on the grounds of your property. It was quite common for a lot of people to stuff them up the chimney breast, but a lot of people stick them into the garden. They bury them in the garden. It is vitally important that they don't get broken, because if they get broken, the protection they supposedly offer is gone. It is interesting to note that the specification must be iron nails, because as a lot of you know who listen to me and Andy a lot, one of the things the Fae despise is iron. And it is believed, you know, that negative magic can actually be transported by negative energies, and because people believe that the Fae, you know, Christians believe that the Fae are corrupted demons, you know, that is where possibly this belief of this anti-X, anti-curse jar comes from, is the old connections to the Fae and their hatred of iron.
Right.
Quite an interesting way of doing it. There are other ways you can do it, but the one that people tend to find funny is the peeing in the jar with the iron nails. They've got various names that people refer to them as, James. Witch bottle is just one of them. But the common belief is you have to pee into your jar of iron nails until it's full, seal it up, and either conceal it within the house or on the grounds of the property, bury it in the garden, and it should reflect all negative energy back to the sender, which combined on top of the threefold consequence is not going to be very pleasant for whoever sends it. See, Sam, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, I did hear about you talking about the nails before, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and this again is where things like the horseshoe above the door frame and stuff come in, because
Yeah.
these go back to the old pagan beliefs regarding the Fae themselves, where, you know, traditionally horseshoes are made out of iron, and the majority of the Fae despise iron, so it was supposed to keep the Fae out your house. Again, another pagan belief.
The horseshoe on the door is still a very big Irish thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it you know, people see it as a luck thing, which it is, but the original pagan belief was the iron repelled not only the Fae, but it also repelled bad, negative witchcraft, things like curses and hexes, anything flung at somebody. Jane says, yeah, they have found lots of witch bottles under hearths. Some contain urine, nails, menstrual blood, blackthorns, yeah. The easiest one was urine, but blood is another accepted one. Blood can actually be used in a lot of magical spells and rituals within witchcraft, but it tends to be your own blood and it has to be freely given. and it tends to be a drop or a few drops. You know, you're not going to slit somebody's throat and empty the contents of their blood into a cauldron to perform a ritual in any Wiccan witchcraft thing. If you're going to do it, that is more along the lines of the Satanist type of things, which, again, like I say, is not technically a pagan thing. It is an offshoot of Christianity because they are worshipping the anti-Christian god, not a pagan god. But they're a very interesting thing. Witch bottles. Again, you've got things like familiars that fall under the paganism umbrella, which we discussed last week. Cats and animals, they fall under witchcraft. They are used both in the Wiccan religion and within witchcraft itself. Druids add their own form of familiars in the form of animals, and shamanism is very heavily involved in familiars and spirit guides, very much along the lines of what Native Americans believe in. Is there any questions anybody's asked yet, Sam? Because some of Crowley's golden dawn spells that he did at Bolskine House apparently went on for nearly 6 months. What are your thoughts on Crowley? Crowley's a very interesting one because he was part of the Golden Dawn, and he was actually there at the time that Gerald Gardner, who formed the Wiccan religion, was. Now, Crowley and Gardner were very much at loggerheads. They didn't like one another. Apparently, the spells that Crowley was trying to perform at the time, he never actually managed to complete. Are you back yet, Andy?
No, his microphone is still off.
Okay. One of them that Crowley was trying to perform is very similar to something that Andy's in the middle of now, and Crowley never managed to pull it off because he was missing a certain key piece of knowledge that he didn't have access to at the time, so that was why it never worked for him, sort of thing. I do believe Crowley was very egotistical. He did implement a lot of witchcraft practices, but he was also very strongly influenced by the old Masonic rites and things that the Knights Templar did. The Knights Templar are another interesting subject where paganism is concerned, because the Knights Templar were actually formed to fight for Christianity in the Crusades, but there are many rumours and many myths surrounding the Knights Templar that they in fact were performing paganistic rituals as well as Christianity ones. So there was, and it's never been confirmed one way or the other. There are bits of evidence that point to the fact that this may have in fact been going on, but it has never been proven. But it is a belief along a lot of pagans that the Knights Templar were in fact pagans masquerading under a thin veneer of Christianity. Have you seen the apocryphal witchcraft marks that are scratched onto old wooden beams and doors? Dried cats and horses' skulls were put under the floorboards, and leather shoes put up chimney. There are an awful lot of practices within witchcraft, James. There's just thousands upon thousands of different ones, and you can still actually invent your own forms of different rituals today. Like I say, paganism and witchcraft and Wicca are very much operate under a personal belief thesis. So there's a lot of scope for movement and a lot of room for people to personally develop their own methods. Obviously, when you come to covens, you tend to get people working together under similar means, but when it comes to solo practice of witchcraft, and solo practice is as common as somebody who is part of a coven, you've got a lot of leeway in what you do. You'll never get two solo witches or two solo Wiccans who will practice in exactly the same manner they will always have their own slant on what they do because of this, personal belief element of, and personal policing aspect of paganism in general.
Yeah.
See, Sam, there's hope for you yet that you'll become a pagan. Just don't tell the local priest because you'll get excommunicated. But the subject of paganism is fascinating. But like I say, there are a lot of people out there who've got the misconceptions that pagan, witch, and Wiccan are all the same thing, and they most definitely are not. They are belief, religion, and practice, and that is, that was the whole point of this stream tonight, was to let people know of these differences, because there is an awful lot of misconceptions surrounding paganism. I've just been reading about Gerald Gardner and the Bricketwood Coven. I'm reading about Patricia Crowther and Eleanor Bow, and really interesting people. I will tell you a very interesting fact about Gerald Gardner and his early coven. What a lot of people don't realise is, during the war, when witchcraft and paganism and Wicca was still banned, when he was in the very early stages of forming the very first Wiccan coven, they actually went to the English coastline during wartime, and they performed a ritual to repel Hitler from ever landing on British shores. Now, this was actually performed in the middle of winter, and there are people who are privy to what went on that night, and whether he was successful or not, we can't say. We know that the Germans never invaded Britain. Whether Gardner and the coven actually, helped in this matter, I cannot say, but it is to be noted that a few months after that they performed this ritual, a couple of the coven members had died. So in one way or another, whatever they were doing did actually take a lot out of some of the coven members physically, and they did lose 2 or 3 members within months of them performing the repelling ritual against the Nazis. But that is a little bit of knowledge that a lot of people don't know about Gardner and his original Wiccan coven, that they performed rituals to prevent the Nazis setting foot on British soil. They basically chanted over and over all night long that they would never cross the sea and set foot on British soil. How much they helped in the war effort is, I can't say, but they certainly performed the ritual.
The documentary is somewhere on YouTube, because I did come across it.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, that's how I actually heard about it as well.
Does it talk about the ritual they performed?
Yeah, apparently they were dancing around. Well, the documentary was based around partially putting him down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not seeing him in a perfectly good light.
Yeah.
And, that these people were dancing around naked around fires and stuff like that.
Yes, and it was in the middle of winter, believe it or not. But the ritual went on all night long, and as James has just put on, just reading about that in the cone of power that they conjured up to repel Hitler. Yeah, that did actually happen, and Gerald Gardner has actually discussed it himself with certain people. I know for a fact he discussed it with his biographer, because it's his biographer who brought it to the notice of the general public. But they did actually perform this ritual using a cone of power. Now, a cone of power is what Wiccans generate when they perform their magic rituals. A basic coven meeting would consist of the coven meeting at a specified place. They have normally got a circle pre-set up. It is traditionally 9 feet in radius, so quite a large circle. A coven traditionally consists of 13 people. The coven stead, which is the area around the coven, is considered again to be 9 miles in radius. So anybody who lives within 9 miles of the coven location, of the temple where that circle is, can technically join that coven. You can have less than 13 people in. If you can't get 13 people, They very rarely go above 13 in a coven. 13 is normally the number used. Again, I think this is one of the reasons why people consider 13 an unlucky number, because it does go back to pagan rituals and stuff like that. But particularly in the Wiccan religion, there are traditionally 13 people in a coven, including the high priest and the high priestess. They come into the circle. The circle itself is cleansed. They perform a cleansing ritual. They then seal off the circle. Again, another ritual that stops any negative or positive influences entering that circle once everybody is in. So the circle is sealed, cleansed, and then sealed. They then raise a cone of power by various rituals, which I ain't going to go into. If people are interested in this stuff, they can message me privately via the Above Paranormal webpage on Facebook, and I'll point them to books that they can read about all this. But then the cone of power is created, and this is what is used to fuel any spells that are conducted by the coven at that particular time. There are thanks given to the god and the goddess. Then the cone of power is released. The circle is deconsecrated, and everything is dismissed before it's left. Interesting to note, I did once read of a coven who forgot to dismiss the watchtower of the south, which is represented by the element of fire, and during the night the building that their coven was held in burnt down, mysteriously burnt down. So that's something for you to think on. But traditionally, witchcraft and Wicca in general is conducted via the elements. There are in fact 5 elements. Most people are only generally aware of 4 of them. Me personally, I refer to them as watchtowers, and the symbols of them are: for the north is earth, symbolised by a gnome, and that is what is called a guardian of the watchtower. The eastern, and the colour of that is traditionally green. Your eastern watchtower is the watchtower of air, signified normally by the colour yellow, and the guardian is a sylph. The watchtower of the south is the element of fire, signified by the colour red, and represented by the guardian salamander. And then your west watchtower is obviously the element of water, traditionally coloured blue. Excuse me. And there are varying opinions on what the water guardian is. Some say water nymphs, some say mermaids. There are varying, for some reason people tend to have varying opinions on what the actual water ones is. For me, it's the air signs, which are like the water elementals, the water spirits is what I consider them. But people do refer to them as merfolk and all sorts of different things, oddly enough, for the water one. The 5th element, which a lot of people don't know, is the one that sits in the centre of the circle, which is the element of spirit, and that is the one that encompasses all of them. Spirit is the element that controls, that balances and seals the other 4 elements. So while the 4 elements are in balance, the 5th element of spirit is the one that links them to us. The power comes through the element of spirit into us. I think there's a guy in Spain who has Gardiner's original grimoire. I would love to see that. Yes, James, I believe the guy in Spain actually has a couple of Gerald Gardiner's books, including his original Book of Shadows, and I believe he also has his horned crown, which is traditionally worn by the high priestess of a coven during coven meetings. A lot of covens, there are rumours that basically all that goes on at a coven meeting is people take the clothes off, dance around, and have orgies.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is not generally true. It is not all about that, but I will not deny that this doesn't go on because it does. Um, some covens prefer to traditionally do their rituals naked, or what most Wiccans refer to as skyclad, but there are other covens that will do them fully robed. Sex magic can go on at coven meetings between consenting couples. Sex magic is considered one of the most powerful forms of magic you can do, but this is not just solely contained in the Wiccan religion. This goes up to the to witchcraft itself as well. You know, sex magic can be performed in any form of witchcraft, but from the Wiccan perspective, it does go on. But it doesn't tend to be wild abandoned orgies. It does tend to occur between consenting couples, maybe numerous couples at the same time, the entire coven maybe, but it is not a free for all orgy normally. Andy, do you want to add to anything? Like Sam's looking all excited now. Look,
Sounds like I wonder where I can find the cover.
Sam's thinking, where have I put my yellow pages? I need to look up covens. And did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just intrigued in listening. No, I think you've got it there. I think you've got it all.
Yeah. So witches and Wiccans are not a bunch of sex crazed. Well, some of them aren't. Some of us are. Some of them ain't.
Some of us are a little bit.
Some of us are. Some of them ain't. But sex magic does go on at coven meetings. Not at every coven meeting. I'll be honest. It ain't something that you don't turn up to a coven meeting expecting an orgy. There are certain parts of the year where it is more expected to happen, particularly in like the springtime and stuff like that, when it's a renewal of life and stuff. But yeah, it can happen at any time of the year. But yes, it does go on, but it is not the sole purpose of witchcraft in any way, shape, or manner to have orgies, and neither is it common for 13 old women to strip off and dance around a pole doing rude things with brooms. Agreed, Andy?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like you said, it's one of the greatest releases of energy. So for magic,
Yeah.
it's in a pure form.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah.
Jay says Patricia Crowther was from Sheffield near me. Oh, I don't know that. I think she is still alive, and I think the coven is still going. Oh, right. I didn't realise we'd got a Sheffield coven, Andy.
Yes, I believe you have. And I know
realise
where
we
the
had.
I know where the meet as well.
All right. We'll have to go and dog one night.
How about round in an hour in car?
Brett, have you heard of the Toadman rituals? It's supposed to be a very dangerous ritual. I'm just looking into the drawing down of the moon rituals as well. I've got to be honest and say I've never heard of those. Have you heard of them, Sam?
No.
Andy?
If it's what I think it is, then I know it as something slightly different. But I'm just going to have a quick look.
Right, I've got to be honest, it's not a term I've ever heard of.
I'll be back in a second, Brett.
Okay, Sam, go and grab your yellow pages.
So it's basically transforming somebody into a toad man or toad woman via ritual.
Right.
An elaborate ritual involved in toad magic.
Okay. And it just quicker to lick get one from a plant and lick it. It's a lot quicker. Be a lot easier. Yeah, the coven's still going apparently. She goes under the name of Thelema. Yeah, that is another important thing worth noting as well. You will find most practitioners of witchcraft, pagans in general, do have your normal everyday name, but then you also have a practice name as well that you use whilst doing any work within your coven or as a solo witch, Wiccan, pagan, depending on which one you class yourself as.
Yep.
Andy's Tinkerbell.
I got gifted my name from a bunch of elves.
Yes, I heard.
Yeah. And do you know, I actually typed it into Google, and it's... Do you know what it is?
Go on.
It's a medieval kingdom that spanned from Wales to Yorkshire to about Birmingham.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, it's an old ancient kingdom, which is rather interesting.
Jace says he knows a Thelema from... Is she 92, Jace? If there is, invite her round for tea one night and we'll have a chat.
Can I come?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a countryside ritual to gain control over the animals. See, now that is something that wouldn't be done it would be done by somebody who practices witchcraft. It wouldn't be done by somebody who practices Wicca, because it's interfering with even the free will of animals. It would break the Wiccan reed. You know, you wouldn't be doing it to control, and you know, Wicca doesn't control anything. It can suggest, but it cannot control. Well, Jace is going to look up his friend Thelema now, see if it's the same one. I wonder if it's 92. Did you get your yellow pages, Sam?
No.
You know what's going in Sam's Google search as soon as we finish? Covens, Northern Ireland.
Why not? Why not?
Is this proving interesting to you tonight, Sam? Because I know this is a subject you ain't really touched on much yet. So, you know, have you learned? What have you learned tonight?
I kind of had touched on some of it. I'm aware of the documentary, and I'm aware of some of the things that are in the crystal shop and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, to get a whole understanding of the paranormal, it's a good idea to have an idea of what this is about too.
It is, because a lot of what has been adopted by the paranormal community has actually been taken from the pagan belief system. And a lot of them are using it without realising its true meaning, or are actually misusing things. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is why it's important for people to get at least a basic understanding of what paganism is and witchcraft is and things like that, so that they know what they're talking about is actually correct and what they're doing is actually correct.
So I've got... Yeah, definitely. But I've got a question for Sam.
Go on then.
Right, Sam, as you know, me and Becky are very keen on coming to Ireland. I've actually been instructed to do this. And we're going to try and do like a week or two road trip in different areas.
Get your clothes off now, Sam.
So obviously we'll be wanting to come and see you. Right. Now, would you be willing, if we went out and investigated, to take part in a ceremony for nature spirits? Just to see, you'd do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good.
You got to do it naked, Sam.
No, you really don't. I'm not a promoter of that. Oh dear. But honestly, I think it'd be good because then you'll get an outlook on it, on it as well while it's being done, and see how cool and nice it all is, because it really is a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's yourself and Brett that it kind of promoted it to me.
Yeah.
And made me sort of think outside the box, which I think paranormal investigating is investigating, but the thing is they're sometimes investigating inside a box of belief, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Inside the boundaries of what is commonly believed. And when you're talking about ITC, we don't have 100% proof of what actually we are talking to. Yeah. Yes, to say they're spirits, yes, to say they're ghosts. But then I went to the army camp. in my mind, I was thinking about one of Andy's streams or one of your streams, and the possibility that elementals exist, and would they actually exist on this mountain? It was all in the thoughts process. I took out the spirit box, possibly thinking I might get some soldiers, past soldiers or whatever, and I guess a male voice saying I'm a gnome. Where on radio would you get something like that coming up? And it was actually, it wasn't embedded. It was quite clear. It was pronounced.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I was absolutely blown away by that response. I loved it.
So, these elements possibly already know our thought process. So, maybe that's the way the energy works.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just saving that picture at the moment, Andy, that we were on about with Jace earlier on. I'm going to put it up on the screen in a minute.
All right, cool.
So people can see what it is. I've just got to save it to the right place first. Right now, I've got something else I'm going to tell you all. Jace don't even know about this because we only discussed it last night and I totally forgot today. And Jace is probably going to crap himself, so we'll have to discuss this with Jason. You know what I'm going to say, don't you, Andy?
Mm-hmm.
When I've just said that Jace is going to probably crap himself.
Yep.
Andy has now got his car. So he's coming over in the next week. So we are going to do a live Ouija board session on the channel so that you can see what actually goes on during a serious Ouija board session. As soon as we've got a date settled, I'll let people know, but we are actually planning a Ouija board session here. So I need to discuss it with Jace because Jace is a little bit nervy over things like this. So we'll have to discuss whether he wants to have a go at it or whether he doesn't want to be around when we do it, sort of thing. So
okay.
But I totally forgot mentioning it to him today, Andy. It went totally out my head.
Right.
But, I'm just sorting out this picture at the moment. I'm going to put a picture on the screen in a minute. We've had a reoccurrence of Jace's shoelaces again. Jace got up the other day and his shoelaces were, and I have no idea where that goddamn picture is just saved to. Oh God, where would it be? Let me redo it again, hang on. I've just saved the bloody thing and I don't know where it's gone to. Just keep talking, Andy, while I sort this out. It's just so you'll be able to see this picture of his shoelaces. This is what we've started having happening.
It won't come up on Skype though, will it?
Now I'm going to put it on the actual main thing, Sam.
Right, how do I do that? Do I minimize Skype and bring up the stream, do I?
Yeah, but just make sure your stream's muted because...
it'll echo.
Yeah, it will echo.
Right.
Right, I know where it is now. It's apparently in here. There we go. Right, let me just transform that so it fits onto the screen properly. That is basically Jason's shoes. Let me know when it pops up, Andy or somebody, so you can see. But that was literally taken as soon as he discovered his shoe getting out of bed. And this is what's been occurring recently in the house. Not quite as good as the one he had a couple of days ago. That one was literally laced like a chain all the way up his shoes. Has it come up there, Andy?
Yeah, it's just popped up on me, yeah.
Yeah. Can you see it, Sam?
No, I'm just, I'm sort of... I've got too many tabs open here. Right, hold on a second.
The one day he got up and his shoes were actually tied together. The laces were actually tied together. But the one he had before that one was actually like a chain that went up the lace for about 3 inches. But that one in itself is a really intricate knot. It's the strangest knot I've ever seen. But this is what he's waking up to at the moment. He's somebody likes to knot his shoelaces. But I did say the next time we grabbed it, I'd do it. So I'd grab a picture before he undid it. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. But that isn't actually as good an example as the one that I wish I'd have photographed it now, because it literally did look like a daisy chain type thing.
I can imagine there will be more.
Yeah. Well, this is the third time it has happened at here, Andy, but it's also happened at his own house as well.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, he's following him around, and he's been seeing, that white light that I had at the house.
Yeah.
He's been seeing that at his house as well.
It's classic fairy activity. This, I think somebody's took a shine to him.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen it, Sam?
No.
I'll once you've seen it, I'll turn it off and go back onto the normal screen. But that is basically what's happening with his shoelaces. It is really, really weird. But it's normally bigger than that. It's normally more intricate. But that was what it was. Was that yesterday or the day before? Took that, Jace. I can't remember whether it was yesterday or the day before. Been in the last 2 days anyway. I think it was the day before yesterday, because I posted it to you, didn't I, Andy?
Yeah.
But that my friend Janine's boyfriend says it's fairy activity. Oh, that's interesting, Andy.
Yeah.
Somebody else has put it down to fairy activity as well.
It's absolute classic.
Yeah. But it's also starting to appear to him at the house now. Like I say, I saw that red one the other night when I was in bed. But apart from that, that's been it here for me. Have you got the stream up, Sam?
No. My computer has decided to come up with everything that I've done in the last hour.
Yeah, it's a very interesting knock. Go on, Sam, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have 4 gigs of RAM, but it's still slow as Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's basically happening at 2 different houses, Becky. That was taken here at my house, but this knotting of his shoelaces is actually occurring at his own house where he lives with his mum and dad. It's actually occurring in 2 separate locations.
Which suggests it's not locked to an house.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's linked to him.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it with different shoes, Becky. But that is what he wakes up to here. But like I say, the one last week was literally like a chain, Andy. It was one of the most intricately woven things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And a different area too, like you said. Well, we'll be falling over his shoes in the middle of the night because he's forgot where he's put them. I have no idea what that jingle was then, because Sam's... What was that jingle? Let me know when you got it up, Sam, and I'll put the picture back up. I was a new subscriber.
All right.
Thank you, Tatty. But yeah, that is what's been occurring regarding Jason's shoelaces over the last... God, it's been going on for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now.
I'll be firing box up and asking him who's doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did start the box here yesterday, but we don't get round to finishing it off because I want to do a video on things. Because I tried the Roberts and we were getting a lot of interference, so he brought me a battery yesterday because my one battery had gone in the reverb pedal.
Yeah.
So I've got that now, so we'll try and get that done tomorrow. But I'll ask about his shoelaces because that is really, really interesting. Because he did a bit yesterday and Jay swore blind. It actually said my full name over the spirit box.
Right.
But it did say a couple of interesting things. But we're going to do a proper session and record it, and then I'll ask about these knots and his shoelaces. But it's interesting. I'll tell you rather than him having to type it. Apparently, he saw the lights at his house yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? At his mum's on the stairs, and it actually dropped down through the floor. Sort of thing, like it was moving away. Like he said, like it didn't want to be seen.
Right.
After he'd seen it, it like went, sort of thing. But very interesting. But I think that pretty much covers paganism, witchcraft, and Wicca. Unless Sam's got something to add, or Andy's got something to add, or somebody's got any questions they want to ask at the end before we go into general paranormal chat.
Right. I'm just going to. All right. I'm on the YouTube thing now.
Right, I'll flick it back up then, Sam. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, I can see the stream now.
Right, it'll take about 20 seconds for it to come up. Just let me know when it's on there. I'll let you know that in a second, Tracy, when Sam's seen this picture. Has it come up yet, Sam?
No.
Has it come up for you yet, Andy?
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Can you see it, Sam?
I do. That's weird.
That's the smallest knot so far. They've been longer than that normally. They've been at least twice the size of that.
Yeah.
Really, really weird thing going on. There you go.
Gee.
Now look at that, Andy, because I've never actually told Jace what that light looked like that I've seen. All I've ever said to him was it was a white light.
Yeah.
And it is, when I've seen it, it is shaped just like a piece of clear quartz crystal. But it's glowing. Exactly how I saw it.
Yeah.
Who's the vapor, lol?
Me.
Andy, I smoke roll-ups. Sam smokes expensive cigarettes. Sam's rich. So if anybody's got any other questions before we move on to just normal general chit-chat.
Right. I've just found a little bit of information. I don't know what you'll do with it, but
Go on.
right. This is hard. How important are these pair of shoes that keep getting knotted?
I don't know, you'll have to ask him.
Right.
I think them his favourite trainers.
Well, that makes sense, right? So basically, if at all possible, if you find it again, leave it,
Right.
if at all possible, and wear a different pair while it's knotted. If you leave it for a couple of weeks, if possible, you might find it'll have been unknotted by itself.
Right.
If that happens, it's a fairy performing a spell on Jace. It's usually an healing spell for something you might not know about.
Right, okay.
Um,
So I'll keep telling him he's going to give me that.
yes, but you've got to come across it and it'll have been untied, so that means it's finished.
So there's something to try then, Jay. You need to bring a spare pair of shoes over.
Yeah.
Next time it knots, you need to leave it.
Which might be interesting.
Joanne, honestly, that knot is actually quite messy compared to how they normally look. They literally look like the links of a chain normally.
Wow.
Interlinking one another. That is the smallest and the messiest one of them all. The one that occurred before that one was literally it was like about 3 or 4 links of a chain. It was really intricate, really intricate.
Okay, so I found another meaning as well, which is again interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so how many is that picture still up now?
No.
How many links are in it? Can you see?
2 or 3 in that one, I think.
2 or 3, and what original one?
The other one was, Christ, I bet it was 5 or 6 of them, Andy. Got to a bit at least.
Right, so in folklore, and this is still used today, it can be something that's trying to stir up the winds or the air.
Right.
Now, it's an air-water cusp.
Yeah.
Fairies resonate more with air, so they might be trying to make him resonate with his air a bit more. Because I can remember when we all were searching out wood.
Yeah.
I remember specifically Jay saying, "I feel more like a water."
Yeah.
But I really get the air part of him. You know, like his personality is like a bit like I'm away with fairies. It is.
Yeah.
He's very airy fairy.
It's ain't a bit, Andy. It's a lot like that.
Yeah, and that's what I see in him. So
Yeah.
it might be saying, look at that part more.
Yeah.
You know, and apparently sailors, unbeknowingly, still do these knots on the boats to muster up the winds.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's still used from folklore, from witches
There
and
you go.
fair.
Andy says it was 7. He counted them.
7 knots. Well,
Yeah.
seven's the bloody fairy number, isn't
Yeah.
it?
There you go. He said it was 7. He counted them. I knew there was a lot of them.
But it's apparently great healing powers, summoning the winds, and sometimes binding. Obviously, not magic. You can use it to bind each other.
Yeah.
So there's 3 different things here that could be going on.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he's going to have to bring a spare pair of shoes over for next time they get knotted and just leave them as they are.
It needs looking into a bit deeper, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's funny he's starting to see that white light that I see as well now. Really funny. But honestly, Andy, the first 2 were really... The first one, it was they'd actually tied the shoes together. The second time it happened here, honestly, it was literally like his laces had been turned into a chain.
Yeah, yeah.
Witches used knots into string to save the wind, and they would sell them to sailors, and when the wind dropped, the sailors would open a knot. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I've got to be honest, it ain't a branch of magic I'm familiar with.
I think it's real old stuff, you know. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
But I know there was a shitload of knots in them laces the second time, and it was just the way they were done. It did actually look like interlinking chain links, and they were interlinked, and it was really intricate, Andy. Almost like it had been woven.
Yeah.
Witches used to tie knots. Oh yeah, I've just read that. Do you know, that rings a bell with something to do with knots and sailors and the wind. I'm sure I've read that somewhere. You know, I must have read that somewhere before because I'm getting a bit of deja vu on that one. So it may have been somewhere I've read in a fantasy book that's been taken from.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they do lend a lot of old stories and that in writings.
Yeah, it is ringing a bell. Did you notice he was very quiet when we mentioned the Ouija board? I forgot to tell him today because we only discussed it last night, didn't we?
Yeah, well, yeah.
But we'll be doing a live Ouija board session. Jace will probably make himself scared because he's a bit.
I can always fetch some fart spray and cleanse it.
Well, that's it. Jace is a bit flighty and nervy when it comes to stuff like that, so you know it'll be up to him whether he wants to stay or not. But that's really interesting, James, about him used to tie the knots. The other announcement I've got to make tonight, which is rather a good one, and I'll probably be seeing evidence of this tomorrow because with the streams been going on. This morning when I checked my watch hours, I've let Sam know, Andy, I was at 3,997.
Oh,
so that good. Means with this stream, the channel's actually crossed the 4,000 watch hours mark.
Oh, very good.
So we can have a bit of a party now because that's one of the 2 things I need to do, the mobile broadcasting to get it done. So once I've got my other 200 or so subs, then I'll be fully set to do me mobiles properly. Yep, it's it's Cornish magic, Andy.
All right, yeah.
That's where it comes from. A lot of which, perhaps that's where I heard it when I was down in Cornwall, because we did actually go to a lot of Cornish museums and stuff. Maybe that's where I heard it. Have you got anything interesting planned, Samantha?
No, we're day by day, the current situation is changing, and the weather is getting better, but the situation is getting
Getting
worse.
worse.
So possibly more live streams, which I'm not used to doing
Hmm.
on my own kind of thing. So
Me and Andy will just come and invade you. You'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah. I'm yet to invade one of your streams yet, Sam, so I'll make sure I do one.
yeah, lately it's been myself and Brett, because we can bounce off each other, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Me on my own, because I'm not a great reader, and I miss out a lot of the chat. Um, having somebody else there, and this conversation flows a little bit better and stuff.
Hmm.
You know.
So there you go, Andy. We're gonna have to go and invade Sam's next live stream.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
With my little friend here, which I was going to
Oh, you
introduce.
ain't introduced it yet. Even I don't know who a little friend is, folks.
Oh yeah, I have a special guest here tonight. I kind of it's better actually that we left it to now, because we get the topic over and done with now. But meet Mr. Wipey.
Is he the new channel mascot for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, Mr. Wipey.
I didn't expect that.
No, nor me, to be honest with you. That's a very symmetrical face as well, Sam. I'm impressed with that.
It was a bit of insulating tape actually,
Yeah, that's very symmetrical.
and it's insulation tape hat. Maybe we will put her.
You do
Black-
realise you've wasted £200 worth of toilet paper there.
Like Andy said in his in his stream, we may see an upturn in paper mache art. But there we go, Mr. Whiteby.
Mr. Wifey, that's amazing.
You need to stick him somewhere now where he's always visible, Sam.
Yeah.
Whenever you do a stream now, he's got to always be visible.
And if you disappears one day, we know you've gone on a shortage. I had to kill Mr. Wifey.
Mr. Whiteby.
But you do realise the consequences, Sam. Someday Mr. Wipe is going to have his tongue round your ass.
Oh dear.
Yeah, you can see him there.
Cool.
Yeah, he's there. He's visible.
Mr. Whiteby.
Mr. Wipey.
Right beside your favourite little friend with the one eye.
Oh God. Have you ever seen Robert, Andy?
I have, yeah.
Oh, creeps me out. That doll does. He'd have been in the incinerator long before now. Show everybody Robert, Sam.
He either has one eye or he's having a poo.
That doll severely creeps me out because that looks like, that ain't just had its eye pulled out. That doll has been moulded to look like that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Because if it had just had his eye pulled out, there'd have been an hole there. That eye is closed. That eye has been moulded to look like that. It is creepy as hell. Ugh.
Yeah, it was weird. No wonder kids were having nightmares.
What's your opinion on dolls, Andy?
In what respect?
Do you think there's anything paranormal surrounding them or elemental surrounding them?
I've never looked at it personally, but I have read some research of people that believe the Fae can sometimes use them where children are concerned to get close to a certain member that they're taking an interest in. So if they're taking an interest in a child, you know, for whatever reason, it's usually on a magical purpose. They can use them to get close. So like they'll go inside them and to feel closer. You know, favorite toys, dolls, teddy bears, whatever. And that, you know, is an explanation for what I do on the haunted doll phenomena. So without looking into it further, for me, it's, you know, it's a plausible explanation for what we do.
Joanne says Sam could wrap Mr. Wipey and send him to me for Christmas. Are you on about Mr. Wipey or that bloody doll? Because I don't want that doll. I don't have dolls here. There's just something about dolls that creep me out.
Yeah, I have a doll in a acrylic case in the sitting room behind me.
That's that bloody. Is that bloody bridal doll?
No, it's not. That bridal doll is the same bridal doll as the UK bridal doll and the one that John Zappas has. No, there was another doll called Molly, which was believed to be haunted, and I done a Spirit Box session one night without mentioning the name, and I asked specifically, what is the name of the doll, and I got Molly come up.
All right.
You know, I find it's very important that you don't mention names. You know?
Yeah.
But as regards to haunted items and haunted dolls, at this stage, unless I segregate each item, I do not know what is possibly causing activity in that. Because I'm taking items into an already contaminated environment, possibly.
Yeah.
You know, if one item has an attachment to it, and I bring in another item, I'm already bringing another item into a possible already contaminated environment. So to find out what actually could be attached, I would have to work on each item individually. And you know this idea of putting a doll in front of a camera and doing a Spirit Box session. You're not going to get a full picture by just doing a Spirit Box session. You're talking about putting cameras on items for weeks.
Yeah.
And seeing an overall picture. Now, I do get a light anomalies. You know,
have you had any reoccurrences of that blue flashing light?
Not recently, no.
See, because I only ever saw that one at the old house once. The blue one, anyway. The white one I've seen quite a few times, but that blue flash one, only ever seen once.
Yeah, I had a couple of nights before that incident. I had one in the bedroom in the middle of the night, and actually woke me.
All right.
Scared the shite out of me. I was definitely needing Mr. Whiteby then. Yeah.
Blue orbs have got a significance on the elemental level, ain't they, Andy?
Familiars. Yeah.
Maybe you've got a familiar, Sam. Or maybe there's one starting to present itself that wants to possibly have a sniff around to see whether it wants to bond or not.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've had a couple of occasions where a couple of things happened that I actually didn't believe of at the time. It actually challenged my belief. I bought a beautiful doll that I got from a person that gets me items.
Yeah.
And he has a premises in town and that. And I got this doll, and it's about this height, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that night, while I was going out to the hallway, and I was 6 or 7 feet away from it, and the doll came flying and hit me at full force, and when it landed on the ground, the leg smashed. How that doll travelled from the shelf it was on, if it had fallen off, it would have fallen down. But it travelled over 6 feet, and it was about 1 kilo in weight, maybe a little bit less.
Have you ever encountered anything fey-wise, Andy, that's been attracted to any toy or item?
Let me think back right quick. I have kinda in the past when I was younger, because obviously I've looked at my old experiences and been able to put a bit more logic to them recently.
Yeah.
But not recently. Apart from bears, they seem really keen on them bears, But that's more to communication that they can
I was
provide.
going to say, do you think that's that they've realised they can use them as a communication device?
That's it. But in respect to just having I've never really tried. Like saying form a bond with this and then taking it and seeing if it. I don't know. It's all a bit weird.
Might be an interesting experiment to try. Do you get much activity in the house off them dolls, Sam?
Not off the dolls. I get activity in the house,
Right.
but I can't specifically say that it's the dolls. Now, the one doll that freaked me out before I bought it was actually the bridal doll. Now, I bought this as a prop, as a history prop of haunted item.
Yeah.
But the advertiser said that, P.S. this is not a haunted doll.
Yeah.
And I questioned them on why they said that.
Yeah.
And they says, we just want to sell the doll. We don't want to have anything more to do with it. It was very suspicious. And the doll was actually delivered to Rachel's house. And there was somebody else in Rachel's house, and within a couple of hours of the package arriving, Rachel's friend got sick and she got a very, very bad headache. She was actually crying. So we got her into a taxi and went. Within a half an hour, I had a cracking headache. So I put the doll into the boot of the car. I went home not long afterwards, and I left the doll in the car. I wasn't that much in pain. I left the doll in the back of the car. The next morning, everything was fine. Brought the doll up from the boot of the car, and next thing, the headache started again.
Oh, that'd definitely be one for the incinerator for me. It'd have been gone.
But it went on and off for a couple of days. But actually, the doll is now in a glass cabinet that's actually situated just behind this computer screen, and just behind my green partition here.
Yeah. Ooh,
and I haven't had any I haven't had any difficulties or anything like that. I'm starting to do more spirit box sessions. I might start taking out items and start asking questions.
Yeah.
But I've got as much stuff as Lee Steer has. So to actually put it down to any specific one item, I would have to bring out items and put away items.
Yeah.
To pinpoint what is causing activity and what isn't. But actually, I had a little bit of activity before the haunted dolls came. It was actually when I started buying equipment. And one of the items was a static teddy bear. And I asked a little bit more about the bear after there was, some strange spirit box sessions where a child was coming up on by the name of Tim. And I asked about. They said it worked. It was very, very successful in a children's hospital that they recently went to. But we want to sell the teddy bear. So I asked them a lot. Asked them more about the teddy bear. He says the reason why we sold it is ever since we came back from that hospital, we couldn't use that bear, and we have an activity in the house. I'm sorry we weren't fully upfront about it, but if you want your money back, that we understand. And I said that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right, I've got a question for you, Andy, and while you're answering it, I'm going to run to the loo again.
Okay.
James says he wonders if the Fae like shoes, or if there's any possible link with the elves and the shoemaker story. And I'm going to run to the loo while you answer that one.
Okay. Right. I'm going to tell you now, the elves and the shoemaker story is a mismatch of 3 different type of fae. If you really look into it, you've got your leprechaun style mixed with house brownie and then general elves. So it's like a mismatch of all 3 put into one story. I think it's all that they can tie up in knots in general. Because apparently, if you anger a fairy and you wear necklaces and you put it on your bedside table at night, they'll knot all chain up on that purpose. But it's usually a really nasty, ugly knot, just so you can't untie it and it stresses you out. So yeah, but I've caused a bit of controversy today, Sam.
Right.
Yeah, I've got one of the old crying boy paintings. The classic. Everybody's house used to be cursed if they had one, and they'd all burn down and stuff like that. And I've put it on a local items for sale site on Facebook. And it's caused some great controversy, and some of the comments are amazing.
Do you know where I got my painting?
Where?
From a Christian shop.
Really? That's amazing.
A Christian charity shop.
Really?
Which painting's that? Crying Boy?
Yeah, I've caused some great controversy. I've put it up for sale on a local
Yeah, I've seen.
sale.
That's why I said to you earlier on. When I said, "You're selling all your possessions off."
Yeah. Oh, and some comments, they've been amazing. Like, seeing it has sent shudders down my spine and it's evil. You need to get rid of it. And then the people going, thanks, but no thanks, it's evil and stuff.
Because there is actually a twin to it in the crying girl that had got a similar, but she's like leaning against the wall crying with the dog, isn't she?
That's right.
I thought there was a second one.
Oh, there was one of them in that shop as well, and I was drawn to it, but I didn't know that was actually associated.
Yeah, both the crying boy and the crying girl are supposed to have happenings occurring around them.
Was it a lassie dog that was with the crying girl?
I think it is, isn't it, Andy?
Let me just check.
It's definitely a dog. She's leaning against the wall. I think she's got her arms up against the wall. And she's turned looking at the thing, and there's a dog standing behind her.
I didn't actually know about that, but I've seen a copy of that painting a couple of times, and I'm drawn to it for some reason.
Yeah, that one's got a similar kind of history to the crying boy.
Yeah. And Andy, is yours a print?
Yeah, it's just a reproduction, yeah.
I wonder, is it the same as mine? Hold on to
it's really old, like it's from 80s, but...
Right, one sec.
Are you going to compare who's got the biggest now? Oh, I got some. You got to be careful what you say at the moment in case the stupid systems kick in.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be worse happenings if you have both paintings. Oh, is that right, Becky?
Yeah, apparently if you've got both together, it's apparently a bit of a...
See, I've never bought either of them because for me I just find them quite depressing pictures.
Yeah. I just got it out of morbid curiosity,
Yeah.
but yeah, that one with girl, it is like a lassie dog. Yeah.
Is it a collie or is it a Sheltie? Is it a Shetland
Uh,
collie?
I
If it's a border collie, it'll be up past the waist, and if it's a Sheltie, it'll be smaller.
it's just up past waist.
It's probably a border collie then.
Yeah.
Is that the one, Andy?
No,
Or
that's
is
a
it-
different one, Sam.
No, that's a different one to mine.
I might talk to you about your one then, so. That's it. Still have.
Andy's got the one, Sam, that everybody that was in all the news articles.
Oh, that's the one I want, actually.
Yeah, that's the one Andy's got. And it was the newspapers were saying that people were struggling to burn it and all sorts when they were attempting
Yeah.
to actually burn it. That they were saying there was all these weird fires occurring in these houses, but the painting itself wasn't burning, and people was claiming they were throwing them onto fires in the back garden, and the bloody thing still wouldn't burn.
Yeah. Well, I can. If you still have it, I can talk to you after the stream.
All right, cool. No worries.
I think if it's the original one you want, the one that caused all the controversy and rumours, Sam, it's definitely that one. It's definitely that picture.
Right.
I'll just drop you a link to which picture it is in chat.
You should be able. You should be able to link it straight into the Skype chat, Andy.
Oh, how do you do that?
I'm sure if you go into the Skype chat, you should be able to do it in there. You see at the bottom where it says open conversation?
I'm actually on YouTube now and I have a small window in the corner with just...
And you've got an add files at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do it there.
So I can just type a link into that there?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I've got it. There it is.
Oh, I've got it as well. I know what it looks like. That is definitely the one that caused all the controversy, the one that Andy's got.
Right.
But
and it's a bigger one than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite large.
Yeah, I remember my mother burning the one that we had. At the time, the controversy killed
See, I never understood the popularity of it, Sam, because it was everywhere you went, you knew somebody who'd got that picture. But for me, I thought it was a really abysmal, depressing picture. I never understood why people would want a picture of a child crying.
That's exactly. It's not a very positive picture.
But it was a very popular picture at the time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not into scary and morbid shit or anything, like.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested in that just for the history.
Yeah.
Even if I don't specifically believe it, like.
Did you say you were back then, Andy?
Yeah, it kicked me out.
All right.
All right.
But the crying girl one, Andy and Becky have just said. Becky's just put in chat, Sam. Apparently, if you've got both of them, it's supposed to be even worse to have them both in the same room. The boy and the girl.
All right.
Nikki says her mother had the crying boy painting. They say the paint was fireproof.
Yeah.
Well, apparently so was the canvas it was printed on, because I remember reading at the time when I was a kid. I can still remember the articles in the paper as a kid. I can remember the controversy it caused over this thing, because it went on for about a week in the papers. They really went to town on it, this bloody painting.
Yeah.
They launched a campaign to get them all burned for people and stuff. I remember it happening at the time.
It's definitely old original canvas board that it's done.
It's one of the originals. Then it ain't a print of the print. That's one of the old original prints.
Yeah. It's not a modern day one. It's one. It's when it started.
Yeah, that's one of the original ones. If it's still on the canvas board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how old this one is. It's on a board.
I've got to be honest, I've never seen that one. Is he crying on it, Sam?
Yes.
It's right, 'cause I've only got you in the little window on Streamlabs,
Yeah.
so I can't really see it.
He's kind of leaning up against a wall.
Yeah. I can see the picture, I just can't see whether he's crying or not on it.
Yeah, but it's a smaller picture than the other picture that was in the newspaper.
Yeah.
But there was a number of different ones.
Nikki says there were a lot of fires. Apparently so, according to the paper reports. But it was the fact that these fires were occurring and rooms were being totally gutted, but the painting would be the one thing in the entire room that weren't even scorched. You know, even fireproof paint wouldn't survive those kind of temperatures in a room that's totally gutted. Even fireproof paint would eventually, and if not the paint, the board behind it combust with the heat anyway. But apparently these paintings were surviving the fires, and when they were trying to burn them, they couldn't burn them either.
Well, I did see the fire. I did see the tests where they put a, like a fire, fire training sort of setup.
Yeah.
Where they had a room of that period of furniture, and put a cigarette or whatever on the couch, so that the room would go on fire, and document what was happening in the room. And what happened was the string that was holding up the picture burnt first.
Right.
It came to the ground. The fire then engulfed the rest of the room, and the ceiling came down and shielded the painting.
Yeah, right.
But
did that happen in every single case?
I only seen that one trial.
All right. There you go. Sam, James says if anybody wants to collect them, he thinks there's 7 of them altogether.
I don't know if I'd want all 7.
Yeah, I know one of them is definitely a girl leaning against a wall crying with a collie dog, with the dog.
Yeah.
Andy's just checked it and he says it's definitely a collie.
Yeah, there was something about that painting that drawed me to it for some reason.
See, I've always found them quite depressing to look at.
Oh, they are definitely, yeah.
You know, and if you think about it, they are a very funny subject to be so popular. Crying children ain't really the thing you'd expect people to hang up in there, but apparently there was thousands of them all over the country.
They were very popular.
It was really, really popular. I can remember. I think my aunt had it in her living room, and she also had got one of a woman on a beach as well. And apparently that's another famous painting that supposedly got paranormal connections to it as well. But I can remember she had the crying boy one in, because it got like a front room and like a parlour room, and the crying boy one was in the front room. I can always remember it. But James says he thinks there's 7 of them for anybody who wants to collect them. I've got to be honest, I don't think they're the kind of thing I'd want to collect and hang on the wall.
Do you know,
there is a girl one in Antique Centre at minute as well.
Is there?
Yeah. I'm just trying to find which one it is.
See, I wonder how many of them 7 are boys and how many of them are girls.
Well, actually, the boy subject was actually supposed to be a bit of a paramaniac.
Was he?
Supposed to be. He was supposed to be a homeless kid, and he was supposed to have burnt houses.
All right. Yeah, James, I do. I think they're really depressing subject for a painting. Jane says she don't want them either. I didn't realise that though, Sam. That's the first I've heard that. The subject of them was supposedly a little bit of a firebug.
Yeah,
It's interesting, isn't it?
some homeless boy.
That's right, yeah, they were all the 80s things like the tennis player showing a butt. Well, you can understand why that one was popular, but a picture of a child crying ain't really the most, subject most people would normally find an attractive thing to put on the wall, but there was thousands of them. It was a really popular painting at the time. Really popular. Like I say, pretty much anybody you ask would know somebody who used to own a crying boy painting.
Yeah, quite strange because it's not a very attractive picture.
It'd be interesting to find out the history of the crying girl one as well, and see what the history is surrounding that one. Like, if it can find
Mm.
out what the subject of that one's supposed to be and stuff.
Yeah.
Sam, just show me yours again.
I know the light is kind of.
Oh, you've got the girl. That's the girl.
Is it?
Yeah. She's got a fringe and her hair parted at top, and that
Yeah.
you've got the girl.
That ain't the girl one I know, Andy.
No, because there's a couple of different girls
Yeah,
as well.
the girl one I know is actually leaning on the left-hand wall and is only like part of the picture with the dog.
Yeah, but this is one of the girl ones as well. So
Oh, so there's more than one
we,
girl painting.
there's more than one girl, there's more than one boy.
Oh.
But the two classics is that one Sam's got, and that boy of mine.
Oh, there you go, Sam. If you
That
buy that one off Andy, you got the set.
that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
I'd buy a
Yeah.
fire. I'd buy a fire extinguisher as well, though, just in case.
Just in case. Oh dear,
I paid £1 for that one.
that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
Yeah.
That
A
ain't bad
Christian
price.
shop.
Some of them could potentially burn your house down.
I'm a bit skeptic of that, actually.
I've got to be honest. It was something I was a bit dubious of at the time. But there are people who still swear by the fact that it survived all sorts of fires. And I don't witness any of them, so I can't say whether they're lying or not.
Yeah, but when you think about it too, it was was it the Sun? The Sun newspaper, one of the newspapers.
I think it might have been the Daily Mail actually.
Oh God, even worse.
Daily fail.
But I know when this story actually kicked off, there was they were desperate for news at the time. There was nothing really going on at the time. This is one of the explanations. They said that that the paper drummed it up because they'd got nothing better to report at the time. But I don't know. James says he heard the fire curse was associated with the artist Giovanni Bragolin. Not sure whether it's true. Not even sure whether I pronounced that right, James. It's definitely Giovanni, but is that Bragolin? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the kid burned down his studio or something like that, or something.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to have I'm gonna have to have a look at that tomorrow, Sam. See if I can dig anything up.
yeah. But it kind of sniffs of a publicity stunt
hmm
when you have the newspaper involved.
Is there anything in either of them paintings that could construe to be a fire symbol, Andy? Is there any like triangles or anything in them pictures?
I haven't picked up on no. To be fair, there's no tip background. There's no top clothing.
Can you see any
Not
triangles
that.
or anything on that one, Sam?
No, and I'm an artist, so I would pick up on some symbols and stuff. Nothing stands out to me, to be honest.
So it can't be anything that can be put down to being embedded in the painting itself.
No.
James
No.
says he heard that the painter cursed the paintings once he'd done them, or something like that. Well, he probably did if he painted that kid and then he And then, the kid burnt his studio down. He probably would have cursed them. Dorothy says she's got the painting of the crying dolphin. I'd genuinely believe that, Dorothy. He's probably in Speedos as well, little tight ones.
All right. So what it says on Wiki is,
Right.
in the 70s, he was, because apparently people thought he'd died.
Right.
And
When
he was
was the painting done? The original?
Sometime in the 70s, by look on it.
Oh, I thought it was like hundreds of years old.
No, he was found to be alive and well and still painting.
Right.
And claims that he fled to Spain after war, painting children from a local orphanage, which subsequently burnt down.
Oh, right.
But that's part of urban legend. They're not 100% sure.
Okay.
So that's the history to him.
Well, that's quite interesting if the subject of the painting was somebody who come from an orphanage that burnt down.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder if the little bugger did he?
Well, this is it, yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, I wouldn't really want to hang it on my wall.
Wow, I was going to give you it as a gift as well.
You're alright.
I'm only kidding.
No, it sounds, that comes along the lines of creepy dollies and miserable.
I was just going to say, I'll actually go a step further and build you a 3D version.
Yeah. Scan it and then do it on a 3D printer.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that, the painting's connected to the burning down of something, and then there's this painting's in loads of house fire. I suppose you could say because it was so popular, it was in a lot of houses anyway, but, it weren't just the fact it was in the house, it was the fact that it was surviving the fire. That was what made it interesting. And, I can't really see a print being that fireproof. And I know Sam said they did that test where the string burnt and the ceiling fell down. Mm-hmm. But surely that couldn't have occurred in every single one.
It's all a bit strange.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is too, you have to, if the painting was popular and there was a number of house fires, if the painting was popular, it could be just a coincidence that those paintings were in those houses.
Yeah, that's what I just said, because there was so many of them. There could have been an odd chance it would appear, it would be in a lot of houses where there was fires. But it's the bit about it was also surviving a lot of these fires. And like I said, they'd give one explanation about the string burning and the ceiling falling down. But I can't see that being the explanation for it surviving every single fire, because that is literally like a complete sequence of random events, isn't it? It's a bit like Final Destination happening the same over and over again.
Yeah. Like there's you had the question about the paint that seems to be fire retardant and the material that it's painted on. But the question is, how many originals were actually painted of that same painting?
Mm-hmm.
Because
James has just asked an interesting question we could all answer. He's put, Brett, do you think an image like that can actually hold bad luck or negativity? Right, I'll give my answer and then Sam and Andy can give theirs. I believe that objects can store energy, be it positive or negative, but I do believe that whatever the object is has got to be in the location of that energy for it to occur. I don't think it could occur. Say if something happened where energy was stored in the original painting, I don't believe it would then be shared amongst all the prints. Andy?
I don't know. I mean, it's a bit like stone tape, but physical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like it's manifesting its end, but like physically.
Yeah, rather than manifesting a vision, it's manifesting fire.
Unlike a mirage, it's actually sparking.
Yeah.
Like that's interesting. I don't. Ooh.
Well,
I
you
suppose
got Andy stumped here.
I suppose in realms of going back to his topic today, witchcraft, it's not unplausible.
Yeah,
You know,
from that respect, but I don't think it's as a result of like the original absorbing an energy and then passing it on. I think
no,
if
yeah,
anything, it would be more of a spell or ritual kind of thing for it to
well,
transfer to everything.
yeah, and you never know.
Yeah,
You never know, do you? Back in, you know,
yeah. Sam.
Well, with a lot of these things, that there is a theory of intent
Mhm.
that comes into it. But then again, that's a theory as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Everything's a theory in the paranormal, Sam.
yeah. I mean, like there was a paranormal, what do you call them, kind of conference called FearCon.
Mhm.
And you know, Lee Steer, as we all know, has the Poltergeist house.
Mhm.
And I listened carefully because I wanted him to explain why he believed that the Dybbuk box was real.
Mhm.
And actually, what he came out with was actually quite interesting.
Mhm.
It was to do with intent.
Yeah.
You know, even though I don't believe that, you know, you open the Dybbuk box and the spirit comes out and attacks you and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But what he said around that was quite interesting in relation to items in general, sort of
Mhm.
thing. But then again, we're talking about theory. I do have a lot of items. Do I believe they're all haunted? No.
Mhm.
But you know, you got some items with emotion attachment to them.
Yeah.
I have this writing box, and when I got it and I had it in my hand and I opened it,
Mhm.
I could I could feel things. But was that my imagination of picturing the time that this box was the centerpiece in a person's home for writing letters, you know,
Yeah.
to people at Christmas and stuff like that? Was I making that fit?
Like
Was I
mental pareidolia.
possibly?
Mhm. Right,
You
we
know,
got two more questions. We'll answer James's, then we'll answer Joanne's. Brett, on a similar line, do you think that negative people are drawn to negative things or places? Um, Personally, I don't think they're necessarily drawn to, a negative person would be called to a negative place, but I do believe that if somebody is of a negative disposition, they can sense other negative things if they come within their general location. That's my answer to that one. Sam?
people are drawn to negative things or places. Negative people, they can be negative things and places. Yes, when you see some of these kind of doom and gloom and sort of, you know, that kind of emo kind of
Mhm.
thing, and then
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
attracted to skulls and
Mhm.
skulls and graveyards and stuff like that. And some of the introductions to some of our paranormal investigations we see on YouTube
Mhm.
with the scary graveyard, to me that's a negative image.
Mhm.
It's a scary negative image, and some
Yeah.
people are attracted to that and think it's cool.
But do you think that those images call them, or they just sense them when they're in the general vicinity of them? Do you think that, say, if they're 10 miles away, this picture will call them to it, or do you just think they sense it only when they're in in the general vicinity of something similar?
I don't know. I was just talking about mindset, really.
Hmm.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I don't know about sensing,
Hmm.
but when
And
you think about, Yeah, when you think about negative people, I'm more thinking down the line of their mindset, basically.
Mm-hmm. Andy?
Just read the question out for me again.
On a similar line, do you think that negative people are drawn to negative things or places?
So people, yeah, I do.
Do you?
Yeah,
There you go, you found something me and Andy disagree on.
really. Why is that?
Now, you said you do believe that, and I said I don't believe they actually get drawn there, but I believe they can sense it when they're there.
Oh, right. Well, drawn and yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So you're going with a yes on that one, Andy?
I'm trying to mull over drawn and sense and try.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna initially say yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do Joanne's now. This is going to be an interesting one. It's about mirrors. Do you think that a mirror could hold negativity too, then? Right, Joanne. I believe, yes, it can hold negative in an energy from a point of stone tape theory, because I do believe that stone tape theory is a possibility. Um, there is also the fact that a lot of people consider mirrors to be portals because they are an in-between place between reality and reflection. And a lot of people believe that energies can pass through mirrors as a kind of portal. The other interesting one that we can link back to the topic we've been talking about tonight, there is a very old English belief that you could trap a witch between two mirrors. If you get a witch between two mirrors, you trap them there because they were considered evil at the time, and the mirrors basically contained the evil, so the witch couldn't escape from between the two reflections. So it's yes on a number of levels for that one. Andy?
I agree with what they used to apparently do with mirrors and stuff. Yeah. But I don't know if it can physically hold negativity,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a weird one for me, because obviously it is a mirror,
Yeah.
and I've always seen them. I mean, this might be my personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
It depends what you're using them for, but I've always felt drawn to using mirrors
Mm-hmm.
as a protection deflection,
Yeah.
because I do use them in spells for sending stuff back.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what it relatively is doing. It's reflecting something back on. You know, so I use it as an extra tool
Yeah,
in
see,
that
the
respect.
reason I said yes was because with stone tape theory, I'm not going on the fact it's a mirror. I'm going on the fact that with stone tape theory, people believe it's stored by the actual material itself. And a
Which
mirror is made
glass?
out of glass and wood, and so for me,
Yeah, yeah,
potentially
yeah,
it can store on that level, not on the fact that it's a mirror.
yeah. Well, obviously glass is natural,
hmm
so yeah, quite possible.
Sam?
John Zappas actually gets a lot of mirrors. And he believes, especially the old ones, where the reflective surface at the back of it was actually a kind of paint,
Yeah.
where spirit energy could be trapped between the glass and the reflective surface.
hmm
Now he gets a lot of mirrors in, and some of them are actually burnt around the corners, where they've been caught up in a fire and that.
Yeah.
And it brings me back to years ago when I worked in a hotel. And my boss asked me, "You're good at art, aren't you?" And I says, "Aye." He says, "Can you restore this frame? I'll get you some gold leaf paint." And I says, "Yeah, just sand it down, sand off the burnt bits." And in a lot of these cases where you've got these house fires, the actual mirror doesn't actually break or crack.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
but and John Zappa's has a lot of haunted items, or supposedly haunted items, and when he has them in a case, a lot of the time he puts a mirror on the top of it
Mm-hmm.
to trap that energy there. But then again, it is still a theory.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like John Zappas has been doing it for a long time. I know he's been involved in the program, The Haunted Collector, but there was a lot of things that the film crew wouldn't let him do.
Yeah.
And he was glad to be out of that because he could do his own work. And he's got this big, massive warehouse at the back of his house.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually he was able to be open and honest.
Yeah.
About what was going on and stuff like that. And it's not a public thing. It's a thing that he does himself. And he gets a lot of mirrors. But then again, there's nothing to scientifically prove that theory is true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where and this thing about mirrors facing each other. I have mirrors facing each other all over my house.
Yeah.
And is it causing paranormal activity? I can't say it is.
Yeah.
Or it isn't.
Yeah. See, that's more of a modern belief, but the actual really old English belief is it actually forms a spirit trap rather than an actual, brings them in. It actually traps them, apparently.
Yeah, and apparently, this looking into a mirror, and you look into a long time, and you're supposed to see an image. But if you look into a mirror, you possibly are. If you want to see something, your mind is going to see it.
Yeah. It's mental pareidolia, isn't it? Basically.
And there's this thing called a black mirror.
Mm-hmm.
What you do is you get a picture frame and you take off the back of it and you spray the back of it black.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a black mirror. It's like one of them black coffee tables with the black glass. It's exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing the same thing with this black mirror. Is the black mirror any different than the ordinary mirror? I don't know. But if you're looking into something and you're expecting to see it, does your mind manipulate you into seeing that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing, because if you're sitting in the dark looking at a mirror,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see all sorts of shapes and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're staring at it long enough.
Yeah. James says, my grandma always used to say, if a mirror sees bad things, it will always hold them inside of it. It's an interesting statement. Dawn says, 7 years of bad luck if you break a mirror. Where that actually comes from is the fact that because that when originally they were very expensive to manufacture mirrors, apparently if a maid or somebody broke one while cleaning, it cost 7 years of their wages to replace it. And that's where the thing about 7 years bad luck regarding mirrors comes from.
Do you know the Irish wake when someone dies?
Mm-hmm.
They actually cover. I've actually seen it where they covered the mirror on a dressing table and then removed other mirrors on the wall.
Yeah, I believe that's something that Jewish people do as well, Sam. I believe that's common in the Jewish religion.
To set the spirit free and so they don't get trapped in the mirror.
Apparently it's to do with trapping the spirit in the mirror, innit?
Yeah.
Nikki says her grandmother used to say, if you look in the mirror too long, you'll see the devil. Actually, that was something my nan said once. I heard my nan say that. The black obsidian mirrors were used for scrying. I've actually tried a black mirror scrying. It was one of the few things I actually got any success with because it didn't work with me for water. But I tried it with a black mirror and it did. Yeah, that's interesting. Right, folks, it's got up to 12. Well, it's after 12 o'clock now. So I think we'll call it a night, everybody, if everybody's happy with doing that. You happy with doing that, Sam and Andy?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
We've been going for 3 hours. So thank you, everybody, for coming in tonight. as per usual, these streams wouldn't be these streams without you lot asking the questions. So thank you for coming in and taking the time to listen and to ask the questions. I'd like to say thank you to Andy and Sam for being on again.
No
No
problem.
It's
probs.
always nicer to have guests on, and it's always a pleasure to have these two because they both talk common sense, which always helps. As I've got very little patience for people who've got none. Um, I'd just like to say thank you all again. We will be on Sunday doing card readings. I believe Lindsay from ETA is going to be joining us for these, Andy.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be another
Interesting.
interesting session, yeah.
Ah,
So we'll as long I'll just check with Lindsay tomorrow just to check her is. Either way, there'll still definitely be a card reading session on Sunday. Um,
okay, okay.
it'll be a normal session as usual, but there's also one extra thing I've promised to do, Sam, which I'll reveal on the night.
Right.
Okay. So thank you very much, and we will see you all soon. So have a good night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and we will see you Sunday. Stay safe, everybody. Good night.